Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 113, Chapter 113, The Flirtatious Ninth Prince. Chapter 113, The Flirtatious Ninth Prince. At that time, Baya, who had already gone to bed, had no idea that she was once again being targeted by a certain master, who had a doll-pinching obsession. She only knew that the first step of her plan had been realized and she had already attracted enough attention from the dynasty. It's not enough. With my physique, I should be fine for tomorrow's talent test. White Knight was confident in himself. Don't worry, Yingluo, Yingluo, go to sleep. I'm so sleepy, Yingluo. Little Ling moved her little body and instantly fell asleep on Bai Ye's neck. Although she had an independent space to live in, Xiao Ling clearly preferred to rely on Bai Ye. Bai Ye didn't reject it. Little Ling was a furry ball. Even in such a hot weather, she would still feel slightly cold. It was quite comfortable to rest on her body. Wufu and Wufu quickly fell into a deep sleep. After a month, they were extremely sleepy. The next day, the talent test began. The top 100 on the new generation ranking were all geniuses from all over the land of the 9 prefectures. They were all in high spirits as they gathered at the new generation hall Masters Square. The plaza was extremely wide, probably half the size of the Hall of New Talents. The entire plaza was paved with high-grade marble, giving off a cold and resolute feeling. Shua shua. The moment they entered the square, the 100 new talents subconsciously quieted down. This was because the square had a solemn atmosphere that made people subconsciously stand up. Immediately after, the dynasty rulers took their seats on the square's high platform one after another, causing the 100 new talent sect members to subconsciously become nervous. However, the most eye-catching person on the stage wasn't the Crown Prince Yufusu who was dressed in a bright yellow Crown Prince's robe. Instead, it was the 9th Prince, Yu Zhekong, who appeared in a black robe. He was quiet and even a little lazy as he leaned against the prince's seat next to the main seat on the high platform. His slender and lean figure was perfectly revealed by the fitting court dress. In addition to the noble and mysterious aura that he was born with, it made him exude a noble and extravagant aura, like a god's son that was not to be approached. Is that the 9th Prince? The young girls among the 100 rookies couldn't help but look at Yu Zhekong with surprise, shyness, infatuation, and apprehension. Bai Ye felt goosebumps all over his body when he heard the 9th Wanjai, shut up that kept ringing in his ears. He's the 9th Prince. Gu Changhe asked Bai Ye in a low voice. He probably couldn't believe that the legendary 9th Wanjai, who was so powerful, was actually so young. Yes. White Knight nodded. Have you seen him? Yunfang couldn't help but ask. He had always thought that Bai Ye had never seen Yu Zhekong with his own eyes, and that someone had only reported her talent to Yu Zhekong, which led to the subsequent events. Yes, I've seen him a few times. White Knight confessed. Yunfang, how many times have I seen him? How many times, not just once, but how many times? What did this mean? This meant that the 9th Prince really valued White Knight. Yunfang felt his heart twitching. Third brother, Yunyi was deeply sympathetic and held Yunfang's shoulders to comfort him. Second brother. Yunfang felt like crying. This was the first time he had seen such a well-rounded person. Seeing the legendary 9th Wanjai, he could not help but feel a strong sense of inferiority. Even though he was a genius of this generation in the divine imperial state, he was only 15 years old and had unprecedented potential. Compared to Yu Zhekong, Yunfang instantly admitted defeat. Only this person was worthy of the White Knight crickets. See. At this moment, Yu Zhekong's gaze shifted from the stage to Yunfang. Chapter 114, Chapter 114, Attention from all sides, 1. Chapter 114, Attention from all sides, 1. Yunfang's breathing stopped. However, before he could recover, Yu Zhekong's gaze turned to Bai Ye, who was standing beside Yunfang. When he saw that the latter was actually dressed in black today, he couldn't help but smile slightly. Bai Ye's fair skin, under the contrast of her black clothes, undoubtedly appeared even more fair and attractive, especially when the morning light scattered on her body, it added a sense of beauty to her, like a rose in the night. Shiroya could feel Yuju's attention on him, so he subconsciously glanced at him before looking away in a daze. This little thing. Yu Zhekong mumbled softly, but the smile on his lips deepened. He liked the way she was obviously angry and unhappy that he had her under his control, but she was helpless and could only let him do as he pleased. He had originally planned to find Bai Ye last night, but unfortunately, he was later called into the palace and was kept by his father until this morning. He could not come early even if he wanted to. But it's good too. He had gained a lot last night. What is 9th brother so happy about? Why don't you tell us? The crown prince, Yu Fusu, felt that Yu Zhekong's smile was a little too charming for his eyes. Hearing this, Yu Zhekong's eyes flickered, but the smile on his lips remained. Last night, we finally settled our marriage. Of course I'm happy. Oh. Yu Fusu's eyelids twitched. The fingers on her knees could not help but move gently. He unconsciously listed all the young ladies of the capital's 4 great clans, as well as the daughters of some important officials. Then, he immediately had a few candidates in mind. At the same time, he did not forget to ask, I heard that 9th brother entered the palace last night. Was it to discuss this with father? Yes. Yu Zhekong was very satisfied with this. Which family's daughter is so attractive to 9th brother that she could make you come to the palace overnight to ask for her hand in marriage? Yu Fusu massaged his emise and thought of Daiwo Kinga, the pride of the 5th family that he had been begging for but had not been able to marry. Everyone will know later. Yu Zhekong smiled and didn't reply. Yu Fusu furrowed his brows. He did not like to be kept in suspense. However, just as he was about to ask more, a loud and clear voice was heard. The emperor has arrived. All the people sitting on the high platform immediately stood up to welcome the emperor. On the other hand, Yu Ninefold's speed was still a little slow, slower than the others. However, the rest of the people were obviously not surprised by his behavior. Even the crown prince could only be envious, jealous, and hateful, and could not do anything. We pay our respects to your majesty, for thousands of years. We are all waiting for you. A large group of important ministers knelt down. The emperor of the Tianqian dynasty, Yu Qinyi, sat down on the main seat of the high platform in an imposing manner, amidst the kowtowing of his subjects. The 100 rookies were all excited by his appearance. After all the officials and ministers had paid their respects, Yu Jianqian excused himself from the salutations, and everyone took their places. I didn't expect the emperor to come in person. It seems that we're the focus of attention. That's great. I remember that the emperor hasn't been to the new generation ranking live for 30 years. Has the talent test been completed? Isn't that so? However, he is definitely not paying attention to us. We are basking in White Knight's glory. The emperor must have been shocked by White Knight's battle record, so he wanted to see White Knight's talent. Ah! Will the Lords of the Heavens Will Mansion also come? It can't be. The Heavens Will Mansion is so mysterious. When they accepted Lord Qin, no high-level officials of the Heavens Will Mansion came personally. Chapter 115, Chapter 115, Chapter 115. Attention from all sides, 2. Chapter 115, Chapter 115. Attention from all sides, 2. The 100 rookies were extremely excited. Quite a few people even cast glances at Bayet, their sparkling eyes almost blinding Bayet. Hee. White Knight held his forehead. Silence. Because of the good hosting yesterday, the person who was named to host the talent test today, the Cyan Cloud State Registrar, Meng Qingfang, had already shouted. No need to be so formal, let's start the test. Yu Qinyi said. Yes, Your Majesty. Meng Qingfang immediately knelt down and accepted the order. After that, Meng Qingfang walked to the center of the square and announced, the talent test will be carried out immediately. The new talents who have been selected, please step forward to test your talent. Yes. The 100 rookies shouted in unison, full of energy. I would also like to remind you that your previous battle achievements are part of the assessment. However, your talent will determine which academy and official department of the dynasty you can receive focused training from. Usually, those who have a talent index of 7 stars and above will be admitted into the Genius Academy and become the top figures of the dynasty in the future. Meng Qingfang explained loudly. As soon as he finished speaking, the rookies were in an uproar. They seemed to have already seen the scene of them becoming famous and taking up high positions. Be quiet. Meng Qingfang shouted loudly again. The new talents immediately fell silent. After all, no one wanted to leave a bad impression on the emperor and the nobles of the dynasty. What if they were rejected because of this? That would be a huge loss. While the rookies were discussing excitedly, Baya was not idle either. She secretly paid attention to the people on the high platform, but did not dare to use her spiritual power to check on them. They're at least profound kings, little Yer. However, Xiaoling was sharp enough to determine their cultivation based on their auras. Yu Zhishong's cultivation is also at the profound king stage. White Knight was more concerned about this. Ling hesitated and didn't answer. You can't tell. Bai raised his brows, feeling a little indignant. The stronger Yu Zhishong was, the less chance she had of turning the tables, and this made her very unhappy. No, I just don't like him. My eyes hurt when I see him, and I don't want to feel him. Little Ling pouted. She didn't like the aura of Imperial Stage 9 the most. It was so beautiful. Alright, go ahead and brag. You obviously can't tell. Bai Ye laughed at Xiaoling, intending to goad her into action. He did not expect Xiaoling to be so listless. All right, I admit it, Yingluo. White Knight, he. At this moment, Meng Qingfang had already ordered people to carry a half-meter tall steel that was emitting a faint colorful light to the center of the square. Under Bai Ye's careful observation, he could see that there were some strange patterns on the platform. They were twisted like formation patterns, like tadpoles spreading on the surface of the tablet. Why try it, step out. Meng Qingfang was very efficient. After he could not simply choose the test method, he began to call people up to the stage. Here. A burly young man stepped out of the ranks. Following that, this man with a funny name followed Meng Qingfang's instructions and nervously pressed his palm on the tablet. The steel platform, which was emitting a faint colorful light, instantly shot out a golden rainbow. The rainbow light soared up and then stopped with a caw. After that, it stopped moving. Metal attribute physique, talent index 5 stars. All right, you may leave. After Meng Qingfang made the announcement and registered, she said. Chapter 116, Chapter 116, Who is the daughter-in-law? Chapter 116, Who is the daughter-in-law? However, when he heard that his talent index was only 5 stars, he was listless and could only leave the stage with regret. Dong Jianbo, please. Meng Qingfang called out names in an orderly manner. In the beginning, when the rookies were called, they would go up excitedly and nervously, and then come down dejectedly. It was not until the 34th person that the situation improved slightly. Gu Changhe. Here. Gu Changhe, whose name was called, was so excited that he almost stepped on Bai Ye's foot. Fortunately, Bai Ye dodged quickly. Gu Changhe looked at Bai Ye apologetically, but the latter waved his hand and sent him to the arena. Good luck. Yunfang also encouraged Gu Changhe. Thank you. Gu Changhe clenched his fist and thanked him. Then, he quickly went up the stage. So rash, he. White Knight held his forehead. Yunyi chuckled when he heard this. It's good that Changhe is pure and honest. If he can maintain this pure heart, he will definitely become a great person in the future. I hope so. After all, Gu Changhe was one of the people Bai Ye had gotten along with after he came here. Although they had not reached the point of being close friends, they could be considered good friends. Friends. Bai Ye was slightly surprised by the word that appeared in his mind. She had never trusted anyone before, so she would never call herself a friend. To the former White Knight, there were only two types of people: strangers and people he knew. However, when he thought about Gu Changhe's honest and shy behavior, how he repeatedly protected her like a sister but did not have the strength to do so, Bai Ye smiled softly. Gu Changhe has the fire attribute and his talent index is 7 stars. With your battle record, I believe the Genius Academy will accept you. Meng Qingfang praised. Really? Gu Changhe had a dumbfounded expression on his face, as if he had won the 5 million yuan prize. Not bad. Meng Qingfang knew that Gu Changhe had a good relationship with Bai Ye, so she nodded her head in a tolerant manner in the face of his rash behavior. Gu Changhe then walked back to the formation from the center of the field in a daze. Bai Ye was really afraid that he would fall on the ground if he was not careful. However, what made Gu Changhe freeze like a zombie was Gu Changhe, report to the Genius Academy in 3 months. On the high platform, Chang Bizhu, the head of the Genius Academy, had already called out names. Congratulations, Qian. The other influential officials from the other dynasties congratulated Cheng Bizhu one after another. Among them, the Minister of Heavenly Troops, Quang Qingmue, couldn't help but exclaim, Brother Cheng, you're so lucky to be able to recruit geniuses back to the academy every time. You're speaking as if the children in my school weren't taken away by you in the end. Cheng Bizhu said unhappily. But you kept the essence by your side. Quang Qingmue protested, but at the same time, he did not forget to openly complain, Your Majesty, I think that Zhang Bing from the Genius Academy is completely suitable to come to the Ministry of Heavenly Troops to grind his experience. Lord Quan. Cheng Bizhu was anxious. Ha ha ha, you guys fight for it? Let the child go wherever he wants. In short, they are all talents of the dynasty. I don't care. Yu Qinyi was obviously very open-minded. Otherwise, his subjects would not be so lively. White Knight is that? Yu Qinyi, as the old father, had already looked around the crowd, but he couldn't find any beauty that was as beautiful as Yu Zhekong had described. Well, there was one who was quite good-looking, but unfortunately, he was a little too young, like a bean sprout. He was only 13 or 14 years old. What was going on with the selection this time? He's so young, yet he's here too. What Yu Qinyi didn't know was that the little bean sprout in his eyes was actually the future wife that Yu Zhekong had described. Is it that? Quang Qingmue looked around and thought that Qing Xianying, who was dressed in white, was the legendary White Knight. Chapter 117, Chapter 117, Chapter 117 Petty Wanjai. Chapter 117, Chapter 117 Petty Wanjai. The boorish man, Kwang King Muo, thought that Bai Ye, with the surname Bai, should like to wear clothes. She's just a little older. I heard that she's only 15 years old, but from what I've seen, she's only a 13 or 14-year-old girl. There's no way she's 15. Kwang King Muo's eyes were the same as Yu Qinyi's. In fact, Bai Ye's development was slower than the ladies in the capital, so Yingluo really hadn't developed yet. But even so, her appearance was like a pearl or a moon, and all the observant big shots could see that this girl would definitely be an extraordinary beauty when she grew up. Why not? Yu Zhekong wasn't happy when he heard the word silly little girl. Where did his little one's fur turn yellow? It was so black and so bright. Are you blind? Kwang King Muo didn't expect Yu Zhekong to reply, and his tone seemed to be filled with anger. He was a little stunned. Fortunately, it was at this moment. Mo Kinglan, water and wood dual attribute. Talent index of 8 stars. Meng Qingfang's excited voice attracted the attention of everyone on the high platform, and they all focused on the center of the square. Kwang King Muo's awkwardness dissipated quite a bit. He looked at Yu Zhekong carefully and saw that the latter didn't say anything. He then heaved a sigh of relief. However, he didn't know that a certain narrow-minded prince was already secretly unhappy with him. She might make things difficult for him in the future. That's great. This child is from our heavenly hospital. The water attribute has healing power, and the wood attribute can distinguish medicinal properties. He's a rare talent in our heavenly hospital. When the head of the heavenly hospital, Yao Kanglan, heard this, he immediately announced happily. Not bad. It seems like the heavenly hospital is going to have a top-tier doctor soon. You have to train him well, Director Yao. Yu Qinyi urged with a nod. Yes, Your Majesty. Rest assured, Your Majesty. I will definitely raise the child well and make her a qualified doctor as soon as possible. Yao Kanglan stood up and accepted the order. At this moment, I didn't expect her talent to be so good. After Bai Ye saw Mo Kinglan, who had returned to the team excitedly, he realized that this girl was the one who had a profound insight into Qing Xianying in the new talent hall yesterday. You know her? Yunfang could not help but ask when he heard this. I don't. White Knight shook his head. I just noticed it before. Mr. Han will also be going to the heavenly hospital, right? White Knight asked casually. Yes, his mentor has already been decided. Yunfang was very happy that Bai Ye had taken the initiative to talk to him and immediately sold out all sorts of information about Han Ling. His family is an alchemist family. His grandfather was the former director of the heavenly hospital, and now he has retired behind the scenes to become the grand elder. Qian. Han Ling, who was at the side, had a premonition that all the embarrassing things that happened when he was young would be exposed. He really wanted to interrupt, but he could not do such uncivilized behavior. Lu Ming is of the water and fire attributes, and her talent index is 8.5 stars. Very good. At this moment, Meng Qingfang suddenly exclaimed in surprise. After all, if one's talent index could reach 7 star, there was a high possibility that he would become a mystical king in the future. As for those with talent index of 8 stars, they were basically destined to be future Xian kings. It wasn't impossible for him to become the Xian emperor. Especially Yingluo. Child, your spiritual force fluctuations are not bad. Are you an alchemist? Yao Kanglan from the heavenly hospital asked. He was in charge of the hospital and was also an alchemist master. His spiritual power was extraordinary, so he could naturally capture the spiritual fluctuations triggered by Lu Mingshui's test. Dean, I'm a first-grade alchemist. Lu Mingshui bowed in acknowledgement. Chapter 118, Chapter 118, Chapter 118 The Finale. Chapter 118, Chapter 118 The Finale. Alright, take good care of yourself and report to the heavenly hospital in 3 months. Yao Kanglan was very happy. He felt that taking in these 2 children today was already a great harvest. After all, the heavenly hospital's requirements for talents were actually very strict, especially talents like alchemists, who were even more difficult to come by. But today, not only did he accept a seedling who was destined to become a top doctor, but he also recruited an alchemist baby. In addition, there's still one more person. The teacher's grandson has yet to go on stage. He's also from our heavenly hospital. This time, our heavenly hospital has reaped a great harvest. As soon as Yao Kanglan thought of this, he grinned so widely that his smile reached his ears. Hey, F***ck. If the heavenly hospital has 2 talents, what about the heavenly troops department? Where's our heavenly troops? Kwang King Muo was anxious. In the previous years, he still had the opportunity to work with the hospital and watch others recruit people. Now, we'll reveal the top 10 rookies talent index. Meng Qingfang announced. When the dignitaries on the high platform heard this, their spirits were instantly lifted, especially the Minister of Heavenly Troops, Quan Qingmue, who had not yet recruited anyone. He was even more eager to find a talent in the top 10 to be nurtured by the Ministry of Heavenly Troops. Minister Quan, don't worry. All of you from the Ministry of War are talented generals. One man can hold off 10,000 men. No matter which child you like this time, you can take him away. No one can take him away. Ye consoled. In fact, it was very difficult to go to the Heavenly Ministry of War. Not only did he have to polish his weapons for 3 years from the moment he entered the ministry, but he also had to train from a small soldier to a general. It was really hard. Therefore, children with talent in refining were more willing to go to genius academies. This way, they could reduce the hardships of being in the army, and when they came out, they could directly enter the Ministry of Heavenly Troops as officials. But that's different, after all. Your subject thanks your majesty. Quan Qingmue was extremely excited. He had always felt that the young people of the Heavenly Soldier Department lacked the tenacity to shoulder the burden. This was because most of them had come from genius academies and had not been trained by the orthodox military and law from the beginning. As they were talking, the top 10 rookies had been divided up to Yunfang. Yunfang, lightning, fire, and metal attributes. All 3 of his talent index have reached 8 stars. Your Majesty. This one. He's the one. He's of the lightning, fire, and metal attributes. He's the top talent of our Heavenly Armament Division. I don't care, I want him. Just because he's a child of the Yun family, he can't refuse to go to the Ministry of Heavenly Troops to train. Quan Qingmue jumped up in surprise. Oh my god. Finally, a super genius. Quan Qingmue was so excited that he almost cried, especially when Yu Qinyi had said something earlier. That's great. However, the elders of the disdainful Yun family wouldn't ridicule him. I agree, Yu Zhekong added. He couldn't wait for Yunfang to suffer more. This little brat was actually thinking about his woman. The heavenly troops would be stuck there for at least 3 to 5 years. Good. Quan Qingmue did not expect Yu Zhekong to support him so much and was so touched that he was about to cry. Then, Yu Qinyi opened his mouth and the poor Yunfang went directly to the Ministry of Heavenly Troops for a chat. The geniuses who came later were all given a good place to go to. Ying Qi and Ye Guhong were of the dark and light attributes respectively. The former's talent index was only 7 stars, but he was still quickly taken by the Profound Secrets Manor. This was because the Profound Secrets Manor needed talents of the light and dark attributes, and they were really lacking in talents. As for Ye Guhong, he was a talent with the 8-star attribute. The Profound Secrets Manor's principal expressed on the spot that he wanted to be Ye Guhong's teacher. Qing Xianying went to the Genius Academy, and Yun Yi was appointed to the internal government. With the connections of the Yun family, he was destined to be an important official in internal affairs. White Knight, please go on stage. In the end, White Knight, the rising star that everyone looked up to, finally appeared. At this moment, no one knew that she was going to break all the records. Chapter 119, Chapter 119, Unrivaled Talent, Peerless Heaven's Favorite. Chapter 119, Unrivaled Talent, Peerless Heaven's Favorite. We're here, White Knight stepped out and steadily walked onto the stage. Before her, including Eagle Devour who barely passed, there were only 23 people who had talent index above 7 stars. It's really her. Quan Qingmue, who had just received a closed-door disciple, was not too surprised when he saw that Baiye was indeed the silly little girl he had known. After all, out of the 100 rookies on the field, only White Knight had yet to undergo the talent test. How long do we have to wait? Yu Qinyi took a closer look at Baiye and sighed. She's so young. Even if he betrays her, it'll take a long time for the couple to consummate their marriage. And Yingluo. Yu Qinyi could not help but look at his most outstanding son with a strange expression. He could not understand why his son did not like any of the girls in the capital who were of the right age and were good-looking. Why did he have to have this bean sprout? If the guards were standing further away, Yu Zhekong's personal guard would definitely run up to him and tell him what he was thinking. That's because His Royal Highness has a weird taste. He likes the feeling of little beauties coming out of the stinky swamp. His talent should be pretty good, at least not below Yunfang's. I just don't know what attribute he will have. Cheng Bizhu from the Institute of Geniuses commented based on his experience. There are many spirit herbs in her battle record. I think it will be wood attribute. Our heavenly hospital might be able to accept another genius. Yao Kanglin replied. Don't. Dean, that's enough. You've already taken in 3 geniuses. It's best to leave this one with such powerful combat strength to our heavenly armament division. She'll definitely become a female general of her generation. Kwang Qingmu kept Yunfang and turned his gaze to Bai Ye. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he was stared at by a low-pressure evil gaze, which made him shiver all over. Her talent was buried in the Ministry of War. Yu Zhekong's voice was calm as he spoke. He was even more displeased with Kwang Qingmu. He actually wanted to place his people in the Ministry of War with that Yun? He. Upon hearing this, all the nobles on the platform looked at Yu Zhekong with surprise and understanding. It was also at this moment. Let's start. Meng Qingfang requested for Bai Ye's help. White Knight simply struck out with his palm, and immediately after. Whoosh. In that instant, the platform exploded with colorful light. Waves of rich spiritual qi surrounded the surface of the tablet, even completely enveloping Bai Ye's petite body. Buzz buzz buzz. The stone platform was still letting out a violent buzzing sound, as if it was extremely ecstatic, but also as if it couldn't bear it. The sound directly hit the heartstrings of everyone present. This is Zhen Zhen. Meng Qingfang, who was hosting the test, was so shocked that her mouth was wide open, and her eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. What's the situation? Yu Qinyi, who was able to hold his ground, asked in a clear voice. However, even though he was the king of a country and had seen many bizarre things, he had never heard of it before. He had never seen anyone who could trigger such a scene during the talent test. Could it be that Yingluo? Whoosh. It was also at this moment that a vibrant green rainbow shot up from the tablet's surface, which was wrapped in rich and colorful spiritual qi. Clang. A loud phoenix cry accompanied the green rainbow. Qi. At the same time, a proud blue Luan also flew into the sky. Chapter 120, Chapter 120, Unrivaled Talent, Peerless Heaven's Favorite. Chapter 120, Unrivaled Talent, Peerless Heaven's Favorite. 2. Bang. Seeing this, Yu Qinyi subconsciously gripped the handle of his dragon throne. All the influential people present were dumbfounded. 1. All the rookies, the surrounding guards, and palace maids were dumbfounded. No one. He had seen such a talent. This was only the beginning. Whoosh. Another explosion was heard, and then dash. A shocking blood rainbow burst out like a clear stream and rushed to the top of the platform. In an instant, it evolved into a cluster of flames. A cluster of celestial flames. When the flame burst into the air, the original blue Luan image gradually dissipated. Fire attribute. Pure fire attribute. There was also the wood attribute, the pure wood attribute. A top genius in the alchemy world. Mine. This is from the heavenly hospital. Yao Kanglan was so excited that he was about to fly. Fog. Pure fire body. A pure wood body. It was a super talent tailored for alchemy. Heavens. Yao Kanglan was so excited that he almost fainted. That was why he had completely forgotten that Yu Qinyi was still there. To call himself daddy in front of Yu Qinyi showed that Yao Kanglan was really confused. No. Come to the Ministry of Heavenly Troops. To be able to kill so many demonic beasts at such a young age, his fire attribute attacks are awesome. How can he not come to the heavenly troops? Kwang Qingmu was so excited that he had forgotten the danger of being stared at. But, whoosh. 2 more rainbow lights shot up from the steel. Water attribute. Dark attribute. The dignitaries all smacked their seats and stood up. There was more. Another gray rainbow light shot up from the tablet. Wind attribute. Our heavenly investigation department, this is our heavenly investigation department. I haven't received a wind attribute genius this time. This is mine, the heavenly investigation department's Minister of State, Ho Wenchinj, who had been keeping a low profile, suddenly jumped up. This was no wonder. After all, the wind, lightning, light, and darkness attributes were all very rare existences. Especially among this batch of rookies, there had not been a single wind attribute genius so far. Ho Wenchinj of the Heavenly Investigation Department had originally planned to return empty-handed, but he didn't expect that. Wood, fire, water, darkness, wind, 5 attributes, the first 2 have talent index of 10 stars. Yu Qinyi was also surprised by Bai Ye's talent score. He didn't expect that he hadn't even finished looking. Whoosh. 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 Yu Qinyi's excited subjects could no longer contain their excitement. All of them rushed out of the room, as they had all realized a problem. He's a peerless chosen. It would definitely cause a lot of fighting. Hurry up and attack, if you're slow you won't get anything. This was the unanimous thought of all the dignitaries who had taken action at this moment. Bai Ye, who had already retracted her slender hand, realized that she was being surrounded by a group of excited old faces, and she could not get used to it. What's my talent index? During the test, Bai Ye was wrapped in colorful light, so she was completely oblivious to the situation. She had no idea what her talent index was, or exactly which step she had reached. Meng Qingfang, who had just recovered from the shock, was barely able to organize her words to answer. Girl, you're now a member of our heavenly hospital. You're a 10-star fire and wood attribute student. Yao Kanglan was the first to speak. Quang Qingmu's tiger eyes glared and he squeezed Yao Kanglan away. Nonsense. As soon as he finished speaking, he squeezed his strong body in front of Baya and said with a smile, Hee, little girl Yingluo, you're from our heavenly troops. Your combat strength is very good. You're only a mystical warrior but you can already kill many demonic beasts. You'll be extremely strong if you join our heavenly troops. Chapter 121, Chapter 121, Stunning the Four Guests, the Rich and Powerful Scrambling for It, 1. Chapter 121, Stunning the Four Guests, the Rich and Powerful Scrambling for It, 1. Get lost. Come to our school of geniuses, we'll try to snatch it. Cheng Biz who also wants to snatch it. The rest of the dignitaries were anxious when they heard this. They didn't expect their colleagues to be so shameless and not reserved at all. They immediately pulled the little girl and said, Come to my house. Really, Yingluo? Hurry up and say it. Silence. Yu Qinyi, who was on the stage, could not stand it anymore. 1. Only then did the powerful officials fall silent, but they still had stammering expressions on their faces as they stared at Baya and 1. Meng Qingfang, what's the talent index of the other three attributes of this child? Yu Qinyi expressed that he wanted to know the whole truth. He had been blocked just now? He couldn't see. He. Meng Qingfang, who was dizzy from the enthusiasm of the powerful officials, obviously could not speak smoothly. However, after a moment's pause, he still displayed his powerful adaptability as an official in the court. Reporting to your majesty, I was just shocked by Miss Bai's talent and didn't have the time to see the other attributes. Hearing this, Yu Qinyi frowned. I'll have to ask Miss Bai to help again. This time, I'll make sure to register everything clearly. Meng Qingfang suggested. All right, White Knight, you can test it again. Yu Qinyi also felt that he had not seen it clearly just now and needed to take a look again. At the same time, he did not forget to remind them, my dear subjects, please spread out to avoid affecting the accuracy of the test. Yes, your majesty, the powerful officials had to step back. After that dash, Baya attacked obediently, and the scene that had stunned everyone just now was replayed again. Everyone was still amazed, and it was a strange phenomenon. 9 stars of the water attribute. Yao Kanglan from the heavenly hospital nodded repeatedly. He was extremely satisfied with this little girl in the medical industry who was talented and had all her attributes in place. Darkness attribute 9.5 stars. Originally, because of Eagle Devour and Ye Guhong, especially because of Ye Guhong's income, the profound secrets manners manor head Xian Heze, when he saw White Knight's attributes, his heart immediately started to thump wildly. Wind attribute 9 stars. When the Heavenly Investigation Department's Minister of State, Ho Wenqing, saw Bai's talent score, he was so excited that he almost had a nosebleed. The Heavenly Investigation Department had never received a peerless genius with a talent score of 9 stars and above. Good. After reading Bai's talent score, Yu Qinyi nodded his head in approval. Now, he finally knew what his most outstanding son saw in this girl. As expected, this child's eyes were sharp. He could accurately pick such a small bean sprout. Not bad, Yingluo. I, Ho Wenqing, implore your majesty to place this woman in my Heavenly Investigation Department. My Heavenly Investigation Department is in urgent need of such top-notch talent in the field of investigation. I believe that as long as Miss Baya enters my Heavenly Investigation Department, any danger that approaches our dynasty in 10 years' time will be detected extremely quickly. Ho Wenqing from the Heavenly Investigation Department immediately knelt down in front of Yu Qinyi. He looked as if he would rather die than get up if Yu Qinyi did not agree. Rhyme ice. The other powerful officials who had been tricked and acted too slowly were instantly caught off guard by Ho Wenqing's brilliant move. This was simply tyrannical and roguish. I want to be like this too. I object. Reporting to your majesty, Miss Baya has fire, wood, and water elements as one. She is an all-rounder talent in the medical field. As long as she comes to my heavenly hospital, she will be able to solve your majesty's problems within 10 years and save countless heroes of our empire. Chapter 122, Chapter 122, Stunning the Four Guests, the Rich and Powerful Scrambling for It, 2. Chapter 122, Stunning the Four Guests, the Rich and Powerful Scrambling for It, 2. This subject objects, reporting to your majesty. Your subject is Qian. The ministers all followed Ho Wenqing's example and pleaded with Yu Qinyi to seek justice for them. No one was willing to give in to anyone. The ministers all followed Ho Wenqing's example and pleaded with Yu Qinyi to seek justice for them. No one was willing to give in to anyone. Because Yingluo, White Knight's talent was really too good to be true. What was the concept of a 9-star talent? This meant that as long as she was provided with sufficient resources and not allowed to die prematurely, she would definitely have the chance to become a mystical emperor. What did the Xian emperor represent? They represented the top experts of the dynasty. As for what a talent of 10 stars meant, the ministers didn't even dare to think about it. I'll definitely fight to the death. Such a peerless heaven's favorite made all the powerful officials secretly make up their minds. Especially the heavenly hospital and heavenly troops. Your Majesty, please don't let such a brilliant and super genius in the medical world be buried in dust. I'm willing to use the entire hospital's resources to nurture this child. As long as this child can come to our hospital, I'm willing to do anything. Yao Kanglan felt that if he didn't take Bai Ye away today, he would regret it for the rest of his life. Because at such a close distance, Yao Kanglan could clearly sense that Bai Ye had mental power. She was also very agile, so no matter if she was an alchemist in the past or not, Yao Kanglan had the confidence to train her to become a top alchemist. He believed that he would not be wrong. Bai Ye, who was being fought over, was also a little stunned. She had thought that she only had 2 attributes, wood and water. She did not expect that she also had the fire attribute, and her fire attribute talent was so good. Silly little Ye, you've awakened a limitless dark flame. Of course, no one can compare to your fire attribute talent. Little Ling was rendered speechless by Bai Ye's confusion. Ah, wait. The dark attribute fluctuations have increased again. At this moment, Meng Qingfang suddenly screamed. What? Xian Heze couldn't sit still. He went forward and saw Lao Yi. 10 stars. I want it, I want it. Xian Heze didn't care anymore. He also joined the camp that was fighting for the White Knight, and the scene exploded. And this time, the ones who exploded were these extremely powerful officials of the dynasty. White Knight, what's going on? What's going on? Gu Changhe was confused. It's very simple. She has too many attributes, and each of them has a super high talent index, which attracted the attention of all the ministers in the dynasty. Yunyi evaluated. At the same time, he understood that his third brother, Yunfang, did not have much of a chance. Unless she insisted on marrying Yunfang, she would definitely be accepted into the royal family. To optimize the royal bloodline. Yunfang was calm as he watched the scene from afar. How could it be? Qing Xianying's performance in this talent test was average. She barely passed the 7-star mark. Her eyes were dark and complicated as she stared at Bai Ye, who was surrounded by many strong people. The jealousy in her heart was like wild grass, growing wildly. He's so talented. Lu Mingshui's dark eyes narrowed as she muttered. Silence. Yu Qinyi, who was getting a headache from all the quarrels, turned to look at Yu Zhekong. What do you think? Yu Fusu, who had been holding back for a long time, turned to look at Yu Zhekong as well. He knew that Bai Ye was a talent that Yu Zhekong had his eyes on, but he didn't know that she was so talented. No. He couldn't just sit and wait for death. Father. 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 Yu Fusu's thoughts flashed past. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that Yu Zhekong had yet to open his mouth to directly interfere and snatch her away. However, before he could even finish his sentence. White Knight, our heavens will mansion will take it. Chapter 123, Chapter 123, Entering the Heavens Will Mansion, Someone is Asking for a Marriage. Chapter 123, Entering the Heavens Will Mansion, Someone is Asking for a Marriage. A deep and thick voice spread out at this moment. Soon after, an old man wearing a dark purple official robe with cloud patterns and silky threads appeared before everyone's eyes. Buzz, 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 buzz. 3 more elders appeared beside the old man. These 3 old men were also wearing dark purple official robes, but the silk on the material was different. One of them was the white-bearded black-haired old man who had appeared before. Greetings, Your Majesty. The old man who had led the 3 old men out naturally had to pay his respects to Yu Qinyi first. Greetings, Your Majesty. The 3 old men followed suit. Elder Jun, please rise. My 3 beloved ministers, there's no need to be so polite. Please take a seat. As Yu Qinyi excused himself, he stood up and helped the head of the Heavens Will Mansion, Jun Wuming, up. The nobles who were originally in a deadlock with each other were dumbfounded. Heavenly Policy Mansion. The Heavens Will Mansion had really come. And Yingluo, Elder Jun, the head of the Heavens Will Mansion, came here personally. There are also 3 elders of the Heavens Will Mansion. What a lineup, what a buy-in, oh my, I'll faint for a while. Oh my god. The deputy of the Heavens Will Mansion. The rookies present were so excited that they were incoherent. This was because the Heavens Will Mansion of the Tianqian dynasty represented the supreme martial force of the dynasty. The Heaven's Will Mansion was filled with all the geniuses of the Tianqian dynasty since its establishment. A weirdo. Freak. Awesome. In short, the people in the Heaven's Will Mansion were not human. He was a monster. It was worth mentioning that Qin Bang was also from the Heaven Policy Mansion. This child Baiye, we Heavens will take her in. From today onwards, she will be a member of our Heavens Will Mansion. Your Majesty, you don't have any objections, right? Jun Wuming, who had just sat down, emphasized this matter once more. In fact, the four of them had been keeping an eye on Baiye's talent tests since a long time ago, but to be honest, Yingying and the others were also shocked just now. In fact, he was even more shocked than everyone else present. This was because they knew that the unusual talent caused by White Knight represented a deeper meaning. Ha ha ha, Zhen, of course, I have no objections. Since ancient times, our dynasty has a written rule that as long as it's a talent that your Heavens Will Mansion wants, even if it's my son, we have to give it to him. Yu Qianqian laughed as she replied, feeling relieved in her heart. Why? If it wasn't for this Heavens Will Mansion stepping in, how could he have given this White Knight to so many officials? Although he was the emperor, and no one dared to make any meaningful decisions when he wanted to give her to someone, it was hard to guarantee that they would hold grudges in private. It was all good now. With the appearance of the Heavens Will Manor, Yu Qinyi didn't need to wait too much. She just had to hand over the trouble, Baiye, to the Heavens Will Manor. The rest of the aristocrats, who had originally wanted to fight for it, were all stumped by Yu Qinyi's words. Well, they had all expected that the people of the Heavens Will Mansion would make a move on Baiye, but when they saw such an amazing genius, these old ministers couldn't help but try their luck. What if the Heavenly Policy Mansion didn't react in time? Then they could take it away. Unfortunately, the ideal was full, but the reality was cruel. They could only think about it. Yingluo, Imperial Father. The Crown Prince, Yu Fusu, suddenly stood up and knelt in front of Yu Qinyi. Your son has yet to have a Crown Prince consort. It was love at first sight to see Miss Baiye today. So this son implores Imperial Father to betroth Miss Bai to this son. This son is willing to marry Miss Baiye as the Crown Prince's consort. The Crown Prince had spoken so nimbly that he did not even notice the eye signal that Yu Qinyi had given him. Chapter 124, Chapter 124, Chapter 124, The Famous Flower is Taken, Get Lost. Chapter 124, Chapter 124, The Famous Flower is Taken, Get Lost. Crown Prince Yu Fusu's voice fell. We've No matter if it was the powerful officials on the stage or the rookies in the square, everyone was silent. Especially the officials who had returned to the platform, they couldn't be any quieter. They only glanced at Yu Zhekong from the corner of their eyes. After all, the Crown Prince's words and actions were undoubtedly trying to poach Yu Ninefold. Who didn't know that Baiye was someone from the Imperial Ninefold? From the moment she began participating in the selection, everyone had gradually found out about it, all right? But the Crown Prince was still in a daze. Get up, he said. Yu Qinyi's expression was dark as well, but he didn't say anything else. He only asked Yu Fusu to get up, while he himself wanted to have a conversation with Jun Wuming to avoid the alvardness. Yu Fusu did not understand what Yu Qinyi meant by ignoring him. Well, perhaps she had understood it but did not want to carry it out, so father. Yu Fusu wanted to speak again. Enough. This is your sister-in-law. Yu Qinyi really wanted to dig his son's brain out to see if it was full of grass. Yu Fusu was speechless. What did his sister-in-law mean? Still not getting up. Yu Qinyi was annoyed at the sight of Yu Fusu. If not for the fact that he was still thinking about the dead empress, he would have killed this blind crown prince. He was already so big, but he still didn't improve at all. He only cared about the immediate benefits and didn't use his brain. Sigh, Yingluo, these two children, one is too stupid, the other is too smart, it's really worrying. It's Zhen. Yu Fusu stood up in a daze. When the crown prince's teacher, Qin Mushin, saw this, he hurriedly stood up and helped Yu Fusu to sit down. At the same time, he secretly transmitted a message, Your Highness, don't be anxious. Nothing is set in stone yet. Yu Fusu's expression softened when he heard this, but he still looked terrible. He didn't think that this matter wasn't settled yet. Even father had said so. Old nine, it's you again. You fight with me every time, and it's you every time. Yu Fusu's eyes were dark as he stared at Yu Zhekong. However, the latter did not even look at him as if he did not care about Yu Fusu at all. This made Yu Fusu's internal injuries worse. Meng Qingfang, make arrangements for the other rookies. Baiye will stay. Yu Qinyi's good mood was ruined by the crown prince, so he gave the order. According to the rules of previous tournaments, after the talent test, there should be a round of duels. The main purpose was to give the less talented rookies who hadn't been chosen a chance to perform again and fight for a chance to be recognized by the rich and powerful. The Emperor was in a bad mood, so this sparring session was either nullified or postponed. Following that, Meng Qingfang settled the 99 rookies, while White Knight was brought to the high platform. It's such a pity. This was originally our heavenly hospital's top alchemist. Sigh, Yao Kanglan said with infinite regret, staring at Baya and feeling pained. His words also eased the originally awkward and even gloomy atmosphere on the high platform. The other powerful officials were all smart people. Everyone understood Yao Kanglan's meaning. In addition, they were really in pain, so they all beat their chests and stomped their feet to express their regret. That's enough. No matter where Baya goes, he will be serving the dynasty. Elder Jun's personal visit means that this child's talent is extraordinary. Heaven's Will Manor is the best place for her. Yu Qinyi took the opportunity to change the topic. Yes, Suanji. Even though it hurt to die, the officials who had to agree to it were also very sad. White Knight. After appeasing the officials, Yu Qinyi's gaze landed on Baya, who was on the stage. For a moment, Baya felt like he was being enveloped by a powerful aura. Chapter 125, Chapter 125, Little Wife, Hug Me. Chapter 125, Little Wife, Hug Me. This commoner kowtows to your majesty. As Baya spoke, he had no choice but to get used to the atmosphere and knelt down in front of Yu Qinyi. You may rise. Yu Qinyi was a wise emperor. He would not vent his anger on Baya just because he was angry with the crown prince, so his tone was rather gentle. However, Yu Qinyi was the emperor and his cultivation was not weak either. Hence, the aura that he inadvertently exuded naturally had a certain effect on the relatively weak Baya. Thank you, your majesty. Only then did White Knight stand up. Come here. Jun Wuming waved at her. Baya was taken aback and looked at Yu Qinyi. After all, he was the boss here. Baya's innocent look pleased Yu Qinyi. He laughed heartily. Ha ha ha, Qian, you can go now. You're a disciple of the Heaven's Will Manor from now on. However, if the people of the Heaven's Will Mansion bully you and Elder Jun and the others don't uphold justice for you, you can complain to me. Baya smiled shyly and walked over to Jun Wuming. She did not thank Yu Qinyi, nor did she say anything. She was just a village girl, so it was normal that she did not know about these things. She did not want to be involved in politics. This child is pure and kind, what a good piece of unpolished jade. When the powerful officials on the high platform saw this, they all helped Baya smooth things over. At the same time, Baya was already in front of Jun Wuming. She was about to continue bowing when Jun Wuming grabbed her small arm. The Heaven's Will Manor doesn't care about these things. You don't have to be so tense. Just do what you need to do. When Baya heard this, he subconsciously looked up at Jun Wuming. The white-bearded black-haired elder added, Little girl, don't worry. You'll definitely like the Heaven's Will Mansion when you enter it. Your Majesty, if there's nothing else, shall we take this child away? Jun Wuming pulled Baya and was about to leave. His purpose was really pure, and it was obvious that he was just about to leave with his men. That won't do. A certain lord who had been quiet for a long time immediately objected upon hearing this. I'll send Yair over in a few days. She's not free now. Ninefold, don't be rude. Yu Qinyi chided Yu Zhekong before explaining to Jun Wuming, Elder Jun, you may not know this, but this brat was pestering me to arrange a marriage for him last night. It's best for Xiaoye to stay in the imperial city before the marriage is decided. Upon hearing this, Yu Fusu's chair's armrest creaked as he squeezed it. As expected, the meaning of this sister-in-law was that this marriage had been bestowed to Yu Zhekong. But the imperial edict hadn't even been issued yet, and his father could have suppressed Yu Zhekong's proposal for marriage in consideration of his reputation as the crown prince. But his father didn't do so, and he was biased. It's not a big deal. We can just send the imperial edict to the Heaven's Will Mansion. We will take this child away first. It's quite urgent. Jun Wuming did not want to wait at all. He was in a hurry to bring the child back so that he could confirm her more special talent. Lord Qin will return to the imperial city in 2 days and send the imperial decree to Marquis Qin's residence. Yu Zhekong insisted. He wasn't just saying it, he even got up and started. Yu Zhekong knew Jun Wuming all too well. If he really wanted to take him away, he would not care about anything else and Baya would be taken away by him in a moment. Therefore swish. The imperial 9 tribulations didn't move, but when they moved, they were like light and wind. Baya only felt her waist tighten, and a strong arm was already firmly wrapped around her thin waist. Immediately after, she was taken into the arms of a certain prince who had been waiting for an opportunity to make a move. Chapter 126, Chapter 126, Chapter 126 Godlike Wanjai, a bite. Chapter 126, Chapter 126 Godlike Wanjai, a bite. Good boy. Jun Wuming was caught off guard, and Yu Zhekong managed to grab Baiye into his arms. But this didn't mean that Jun Wuming had let go. Therefore, the moment Yu Zhuchong succeeded, Jun Wuming's hands were like the claws of an eagle, and with a swish, it grabbed onto Yu Zhekong's arm that was holding onto Baiye. However, the next moment, Yu Zhekong, who was clearly captured, was already hugging Baiye and sitting lazily on his throne. At the scene, Qian. No one saw clearly how Yu Zhekong broke free from Jun Wuming. No one even saw the details of Yu Zhekong's first attack. Everyone felt as if, just as they were about to snap out of their daze and blink their eyes, Yu Zhekong had already snatched White Knight into his arms. This speed was incredible. Only Baiye, who was being carried away by Yu Zhekong, could roughly see it. Furthermore, she could clearly sense that in that instant, Yu Zhekong had released a very mysterious aura. So strong. Baiye narrowed her beautiful eyes and sighed in her heart. It seems that the moment Elder Jun grabbed his arm, the bones in his hand suddenly softened and the muscles shriveled. As a result, there was a certain gap in Elder Jun's grasp, and he seized this gap and let go of his hand. After understanding the key point, Baiye's eyes brightened. Jun Wuming's eagle-like claws were still in place after missing his target. This posture was awkward and a little awkward. After all, it meant that he had failed. But who was Jun Wuming? He was the current chief of the God's Will Manor. His cultivation had always been regarded as a mysterious existence like the God's Will Manor, but in the end, he was not even as powerful as a junior. When the powerful officials saw this scene, they subconsciously wanted to turn their heads and pretend that they didn't see it. After all, no matter how good they were, they couldn't save the situation. They kept feeling that whatever they said would be wrong, so they might as well not say anything. Old man, you haven't made a move for too long. You can't do it anymore. And Yu Zhekong, who got the advantage, even teased Jun Wuming. All the powerful officials who saw the scene subconsciously wished that they had gone deaf. However, there was one exception. When the Crown Prince Yu Fusu heard Yu Zhekong's words, he immediately said sarcastically, "Ninth brother is indeed the #1 genius of our heavenly king Wang Chao. You've only been in the Heaven's Will Manor for 10 years and you've already stepped on Elder Jun." When the powerful officials heard this, they only wished that they had gone deaf even more thoroughly. Even Yu Qinyi's expression changed. "Little brat. You've cultivated the Sumeru divine power to the 7th level." Jun Wuming finally realized what was going on and stared at Yu Zhekong. The joy in his voice couldn't be hidden. What? All the powerful officials at the scene chose to turn a deaf ear. The Sumeru divine art. It said that if you cultivate it to the 10th level, you'll be able to ascend to immortality and become a peerless divine art of the gods. Cheng Bizhu asked in a hurry. When everyone heard this, they held their breath and stared at Jun Wuming and Yu Zhekong with their ears perked up. They wanted to know the answer. And the result was, "I guess so." Yu Zhekong replied indifferently, but his expression was clearly a little distracted. Most of his attention was on the person in his arms. Because of the angle, he was attracted by her delicate little ears, especially her pearl-like earlobes. They reflected a faint light under the sun, but to Yu Zhuchong, it was an extremely attractive glow. She really wanted to bite him. With that thought, Yu Zhekong stammered. Chapter 127, Chapter 127, Chapter 127 Really bite. Chapter 127, Chapter 127 Really bite. He did it. Therefore, Baiye, who was deep in thought, instantly felt a warm sensation at the base of her ears. Then, a wet and slippery feeling invaded her most sensitive ears. White Knight was speechless. She was dumbfounded. Yu Zhekong took advantage of the time when she was stunned and bit her earlobe. A strange numbing sensation spread from her ear to her whole body. Everyone at the scene was dumbfounded. Was it really good to do such a thing in public? Could this Yingluo be more mindful of her influence? Ahem, ninefold, although this wife is yours, you have to be careful. Don't mess around and be careful of your image. Yu Qinyi criticized her in all seriousness. Ahem, ahem, ahem. The powerful minister did not expect Yu Qinyi to be so direct. What was going on with Ahem today? Was it a day of collective embarrassment? No matter what, it's always a topic that people can't answer. See. However, Baiye, who was being teased, had already clenched her hands into tight fists the moment she reacted. She couldn't take it anymore. However, Yu Zhekong seemed to know that Baiye was about to explode, so he quickly let go of her and replied, "It's always the crown prince's responsibility to pay attention to his manners. I'm just an idle prince, why should I care about such things?" Yu Zhekong stood up and said, "If there's nothing else, father, I'll take my leave." He had no interest in the genius selection or watching the crown prince do stupid things. The reason he came here was because there was something he was interested in. Now that she was in his arms, there was no point in staying any longer. And he had a feeling that if he didn't leave now, the good cat in his arms might become a little tigress. All right, you may leave. Remember to enter the palace for the banquet. It's rare for Elder June to come out of the God's Will mansion, and as a junior, you can't be too rude. Yu Qinyi knew his son very well. One look at his son's expression and he knew that he was getting impatient. The Emperor's imperial edict. Jun Wuming heard that there was a banquet and subconsciously wanted to decline. Elder June cannot decline, the two of us have not talked for a long time. Yu Qinyi, however, made Jun Wuming stay. With that, Jun Wuming and the three old men who had followed him here returned to the palace with Yu Qinyi. The rest of the officials left as well, but even when they left, everyone was still shocked by the fact that Yu Zhekong was cultivating the Sumeru divine technique. I didn't expect the ninth prince to be cultivating the Sumeru divine power. I heard that no one has been able to cultivate that technique until now. Ordinary people can't cultivate it, but a freak like Zhu Wanjai can't be measured by common sense. He's already able to kill 3-star demonic beasts when he was 10 years old. How do you think we should measure this by? That's true, you say this Zhu Jianqian. The officials left after their discussion, leaving Yu Fusu in his seat. Lu Ming, whose face was turning green and black, sighed to himself. He then whispered into Yu Fusu's ear. Let me go, I'll walk on my own. Bai Ye, who was being carried off the stage, was speaking to Yu Zhuchong word by word. In her eyes, there was an obvious murderous intent that was gathering. This guy, really enough? White Knight did not want to endure it anymore. However, Yu Ninefold's original intention was naturally not to let go. However, when he saw the killing intent in Bai Ye's eyes, he hesitated for a moment before letting go of his arm around Bai Ye's waist. However, Chapter 128, Chapter 128, Chapter 128 His Highness is on fire. Chapter 128, Chapter 128 His Highness is on fire. Bai Ye, who had just regained his freedom, was grabbed by Yu Zhekong. I'm holding your hand. Bai Ye wanted to pull her hand back, but Yu Zhekong held it tightly. Let go. Bai Ye said coldly. She was supposed to be very happy today because her talent was just as she had expected, and she had completely attracted the attention of Dynasty. Although she didn't know much about the Heaven's Will Mansion, she knew it was a good place to go from the few words she heard. But what the hell was Suanji bestowing a marriage? Because she was still weak, so even if her talent was not bad, they could still arrange her life path as they pleased. Or perhaps, in their eyes, their arrangement was the greatest gift to her. Yu Zhekong could tell that something was off about Bai Ye's emotions, and he could tell that the person he was holding onto was really angry. It was different from the anger she had before, which she didn't dare to voice out. This time, she was really angry. Yingluo. Swish. At this moment, Bai Ye, who was obviously at his limit, took advantage of Yu Zhekong's moment of silence and scattered a cloud of powder. Yu Zhekong's eyes narrowed slightly. He could instantly tell that Bai Ye had sprayed some kind of poisonous powder, and it was extremely poisonous. He instinctively dodged, but at that moment. Swish. Bai Ye drew his scalpel. Swish. The moment Yu Zhekong dodged, White Knight's blade was already upon him. The position of her blade was exactly the same as the position of Yu Zhekong's neck after he dodged. Yu Zhekong's eyes turned red instantly. He was certain that the moment Bai Ye released the poison, he had already calculated which side he would hide in and to what extent he would hide. She had calculated it. She had accurately calculated his thoughts. Bang. Yu Zhekong's hand gripped tightly onto Bai Ye's hand. At this moment, Bai Ye's hand blade was already infinitely close to his throat. Just a little more and she would be able to end his life. This little thing. Your Highness. The guards who saw that Yu Zhekong was almost attacked instantly appeared in the vicinity of Yu Zhekong and Bai Ye like a bunch of shadows. Stand down. Yu Zhekong said lightly, and these people quickly disappeared. Once again, only Yu Zhekong and Bai Ye were left on the battlefield, silently looking at each other. Murdering your husband. Yu Zhekong was the first to speak. He even raised his hand to caress Bai Ye's hand that was holding the knife. You can even calculate this prince's thoughts so clearly, huh? It was normal for her to know that he would dodge, but she was able to grasp the distance to which he would dodge so accurately. Yu Zhekong felt that in this world, only this little one in front of him could do it. Was she telling him not to underestimate her, not to provoke her, and not to ignore her thoughts? Little thing. Yu Zhekong's grip tightened. Bai Ye's hand was holding the knife, but Bai Ye's knife couldn't even pierce his skin. They couldn't hurt him at all. Seeing this, White Knight's eyes instantly shrank. Yu Zhekong pulled her back into his arms again. Bang. Bai Ye was pulled by his strong force and slammed into her chest. His nose was sore from the impact. However, Her waist was being held tightly. The force was so great that Baya had a feeling that she was going to be strangled to death by his waist. However, this was not the end. His White Knight instantly felt a sharp pain in his ear. Chapter 129, Chapter 129, Put your hand under her clothes. Chapter 129, Put your hand under her clothes. Yu Zhekong had already bent down and opened his mouth, grabbing Baye's earlobe and biting it mercilessly. Baye could endure the pain, but she could not bear the feeling of numbness in the pain. Especially when she realized that she couldn't move again. This bastard had restricted her movements again. Luckily, Yu Zhekong didn't bite down too hard, but Baye could still feel someone's tongue poking her ear. That feeling was obviously a little nauseating, but it was also faintly mixed with an indescribable and inexplicable feeling. Little thing. And at this moment, Yu Zhekong, who had just toyed with Baye's ear, finally let go. However, he still bent over, his handsome face infinitely approaching White Knight. This king knows what you want to express. Other than the engagement, this king will still follow the original plan. This king will pay attention to the rest in the future. Yu Zhekong replied. Hearing this, Baye's eyes narrowed. She knew that Yu Zhekong was a smart person, but she didn't expect him to understand what she was trying to say so clearly, and to respond so directly. That was good too. She liked to deal with smart people. It was much easier this way. For example, is it possible to restrict my freedom at every turn? In fact, Baye was most disgusted by this. Every time, it made her feel like she was a puppet at the mercy of others. What? However, Yu Zhekong's eyebrows shot up when he heard this, and a bright red light flashed in his eyes. This is the most basic form of respect. I really don't like the feeling of being unable to move freely. Seeing his expression, Baye emphasized that she had to fight for this bit of freedom. This king doesn't. Yu Zhekong said. Nothing much. Baye did not understand. I didn't imprison you. Yu Zhekong even caressed Baye's earlobe. I've never used any restraint on you. You're so obedient, there's no need for that. White Knight was speechless. What did he mean? Could it be that the reason why she couldn't move every time wasn't because the other party did something to her, but because of her own problem? This Yingluo, this is impossible. This was too strange. He. Seeing Baye's blank expression, Yu Zhekong roughly knew what was going on and couldn't help but chuckle. At the same time, he hugged the gentle person even tighter. He had thought it was strange before. Why was it that even when this little one was so angry she could always ask gently and let him knead her? Now it seemed that it was not because she had good endurance, but it was 1-1. You can't use any strength in this king's arms, you can't do anything right. Yu Zhekong asked in a meaningful tone, his hand unconsciously caressing her waist. So you can't move, that's good, Yingluo. He. Yu Zhekong chuckled mischievously. As he caressed Baye's waist, he unbuckled the belt on her black outfit and clenched his fist. You. Let go of me. Baye's entire body trembled, his eyes were filled with killing intent. This bastard, he actually teased him to be a hooligan and put his hand into her clothes? Still touching. This bastard. Hooligan. Shameless. Little thing, be good. Yu Zhekong was pleased by the soft and smooth touch on his palm. He sighed softly, little Yair, can you let me stay here for a while? Chapter 130, Chapter 130, Chapter 130, Reveal her dudu. Chapter 130, Chapter 130, Reveal her dudu. As he spoke, Yu Zhekong's hands were still moving upwards. However, the place where his palm was currently rubbing was the upper part of White Knight's waist, near the sensitive area. If he went any higher, Baye's ears would heat up, and his neck and face would turn red. Don't move. If it was possible, Baye wanted to give Yu Zhekong a tight slap right now, and then a backhand slap to beat him into a pig's head. This perverted pervert. Shameless pervert. What is this? Yu Zhekong, on the other hand, pulled out a piece of cloth from Baye's clothes out of curiosity. White Knight, F***ck. Even her dudu had been pulled out? She wanted to kill someone. However, Yu Zhekong, who had pulled out Shiroya's undergarments, had no common sense at all. He even brought the dudu in front of his eyes to study it. You're wearing so little inside. It's not a defensive soft armor, what's the use? Baye, 1-1, may I ask where this weirdo came from? He doesn't even recognize the undergarments that the ladies are wearing. What the hell is? When the young guard saw the scene from afar, he immediately turned around in an impolite manner. At the same time, he thought with worry and joy, His Highness is really too desperate. I'm still on the way and within the territory of the new talent palace. It's not good if others see me. Moreover, Suanji's future Wangfei is obviously still young, can she bear it? However, the young guard did not know that the omnipotent master in his family actually had no idea what the hell he was holding in his hand. He even felt that it was unnecessary for Baiye to wear this. So he threw Yingluo away. He threw it away. He had thrown her dudu far away in front of Baiye. Baiye felt like crying, but no tears came out. Don't feel bad. I'll give you a pair of soft armor later. Wear that. However, a certain pure and lovely prince still thought that Baiye was reluctant to part with this useless thing and even promised her. That's not the problem, alright, Yingluo. White Knight was also drunk. Yu Zhekong frowned and nodded. You're right. Although it's useless, you can't just throw it away. After all, this thing still had his aura on it, and it would not do if it was picked up by others. And then, Yu Zhekong went to pick up the dudu as Baiye face-palmed. However, he did not return the dudu to White Knight as he wished. Instead, he kept it in his arms. This king will give you a pair. You can leave the one you don't need here with this king. Baiye, Wan. To think that she had a good eloquence, but now she was at a loss for words. How was she going to tell this idiot? However, before Baiye could even finish worrying about this problem, Yu Zhekong's next move caused Baiye's nerves to tighten up. Because this guy was touching it again. Baiye was about to go crazy. So it's here. Yu Zhekong took out a jade pendant from Baiye's body. And this jade pendant was the one that Baiye had accepted earlier, the one that Yunfang had given her. We don't want this thing either, just keep this piece. I've asked Zifeng, and he said that my jade is better looking than this one. As Yu Zhekong spoke, he had already replaced Yunfang's jade pendant with his own and placed it back in Baiye's place. White Knight, Wan. What the hell is this? But before Baiye could react, Yu Zhekong threw Yunfang's jade pendant far away with a swoosh. He had used quite a bit of strength, and he had really thrown it very far. Baiye watched as the jade drew an arc in the air and disappeared into the distance. A familiar scream entered Baiye's ears at this moment. Chapter 131, Chapter 131, The Black-Hearted Ninth Prince. Chapter 131, The Black-Hearted Ninth Prince. Long River? Baiye could tell that it was Gu Changhe's scream. So, the jade pendant that Yu Zhekong threw out coincidentally hit Gu Changhe? This Kazeyo was real. Although Meng Qingfang had arranged Gu Changhe's location, the latter had expressed that he wanted to wait for Baiye. In addition, Yunfang had the same intention, so the two of them waited for Baiye at the main exit of the new talent hall. In the end, instead of waiting for White Knight, an unexpected disaster came. Clang. 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 Yunfang's jade pendant broke into pieces the moment it hit Gu Changhe and landed on the ground. When Baiye arrived at the scene, he saw Gu Changhe groaning while holding his leg and stomach. Yunfang, who was beside him, had already squatted down to pick up the broken jade pendant on the ground. This was his jade pendant, so Yunfang naturally recognized it. Changhe, are you alright? Baiye did not care about Yunfang at first. She quickly squatted down to check on Gu Changhe's injury and realized that the latter's calf bone had clearly been cracked. If he had used a little more force, he would have probably broken his leg. Fortunately, the physique of cultivators was different from that of ordinary people. Otherwise, with Gu Changhe's injuries, he would probably have to lie in bed for 10 days to half a month before he could walk. It was really a grievance. I'm fine. I just don't know which wicked ghost attacked me. It's really disgusting, Gu Changhe said angrily after drinking a bottle of potion. This place is not safe. Since you're out, let's leave quickly. Young Master Yunfang is embarrassed. At this time, Baiye, who had already seen Yunfang picking up the jade pendant, felt a sense of guilt unconsciously. This made her explain subconsciously, it was an accident. I didn't have a weapon, so I used it as a hidden weapon. I'm embarrassed. I'm fine. Yunfang picked up the broken jade pendant and put it away. He tried his best to contain the bitterness and pain in his heart, but he was still young and could not control his emotions well. Therefore, Baiye could still see that he was very sad. I'm sorry, she said. Although Baiye did not know what this jade pendant meant to Yunfang, she still apologized. After all, she was the one who ruined the gift. In particular, Yunfang's obviously pale face made Baiye feel that she seemed to have overlooked something important. Greetings, Ninth Wanjai. However, Yu Zhekong had already caught up to him. When Yunfang saw him, he naturally had to pay his respects. When Baiye heard that the Imperial Nine had returned, he tensed up subconsciously, and his thoughts were naturally interrupted. Greetings, Ninth Wanjai. Gu Changhe also quickly followed suit. You may dispense with the formalities, Yu Zheshong nodded and turned to Yunfang. I was the one who lost the jade pendant, not yet er. Keep it well. Hearing this, Yunfang froze, but he understood what Yu Juchong meant. Yu Juchong was clearly warning him not to have any other thoughts about Bai. Yes, Your Highness, Yunfang agreed. However, Bai Ye had no idea that Yu Juchong was currently pinching off one of her big peach flowers right in front of her. It hadn't even had the chance to bloom before it was ruthlessly destroyed. Miss Ye Mr. Qin has left the capital for some business and hasn't returned yet. You and Brother Chang He don't have a place to stay in the Imperial City for the time being. Why don't you come to my Yun residence for a temporary stay? However, Yunfang immediately invited Bai Ye to his house. Yu Zhekong's eyes narrowed as a dark light flickered in his eyes. He probably did not expect Yunfang to take action against Bai Ye so directly in front of him after receiving his warning. Was this kid looking for death? Chapter 132, Chapter 132, The Crown Prince's Conspiracy. Chapter 132, The Crown Prince's Conspiracy. If Your Highness and Miss Ye are about to be married, it is not suitable for Miss Ye to live in the Wang residence. This is not good for Miss Ye. Yunfang specially reminded him. Although they were on the stage, Yu Qinyi had lowered his voice when he said sister-in-law to save the Crown Prince's face, so no one below the stage could hear him clearly. However, as a member of the Yun family, Yunfang had his own way of knowing in advance. The emperor had already agreed to marry Bai Ye to Yu Zhekong. The reason he had been waiting here was to invite Yingluo. However, Yu Fusu, who was still in the new talent hall, clearly did not realize Yu Qinyi's tolerance for him. All he could think about was how to regain his lost face. Your Highness, this is a risky move, and it's not worth it? Are you sure you want to do this? After Lu Ming understood Yu Fusu's plan, he could not help but advise him again and again. Imperial father doesn't have any affection for me, so why should I care if I hit his face or not? So no matter what, I have to get this white knight. Moreover, you know my ninth brother's character. He's never woken up early without benefits. But this time, he's even betting on his lifelong event, which means that this Bai Ye is worth it? She's even worth Dai Wokinga. Yu Fusu said with certainty. I don't think so. No matter how talented Bai Ye is, the power in the imperial court is weak. Only Qin Bang has some relationship with her, but they are not close relatives. Besides, Qin Ban is a pure official. Before the emperor dies, he will only be loyal to the emperor. Therefore, Qin Ban is not of much use to your highness in the fight for power. Lu Ming analyzed earnestly. You understand these principles, but how can ninth brother not? But he still did it? This matter is already decided by this crown prince, so you just have to arrange it. Yu Fusu insisted. Lu Ming, Yingluo. Yes, this old minister will do it now. He could only say this. Uncle, I have no one I can trust in the court now. Don't let me down. Knowing that Lu Ming was not very willing to help him with this, Yu Fusu even played the emotional card. Lu Ming was stunned for a moment. Then, he nodded and said, I, as well as the Lu clan, will share my glory with your highness. We will share our losses with you. All right, go on then. Yu Fusu loved to hear this. Yu Zhekong reluctantly agreed to Yunfang's invitation and allowed Bai Ye to stay with the Yun family. It was only after they arrived at the Yun residence and had a chat with the head of the Yun family, Yun Chongming, that Yu Zhekong was summoned by the palace to prepare for the banquet. Then you will stay at the Yun family for the next 2 days. I will find you when I am free. Remember not to walk around. I will order people to protect you in secret. Yu Zhekong didn't think too much about it and was prepared to bring Bai Ye to live in the manor. After all, he didn't care about the rumors outside. However, Bai Ye was different. Especially after their previous interactions, Yu Zhekong knew her personality. She was probably not happy with him bringing her back to his residence, so he decided to let her do as she wished. No need, Bai Ye, however, did not feel that she needed protection. Good girl. Although Yu Zhekong knew that Bai Ye's abilities were extraordinary, he was afraid that the crown prince would be stupid. The crown prince was nothing to worry about, but he had to be careful of the crown prince's teacher. That old man still had some skills. It's almost time for the banquet. I won't send you to the Yun family. Be good and wait for me to leave the palace. As Yu Zhekong spoke, he called the guard out. Zifeng. Your subordinate is here. The little brother guard appeared. If you have anything to do in the future, you can tell him to do it. Yu Zhekong lowered his voice and whispered into Bai Ye's ear, if you miss me, you can ask him to send me a message. I'll come over as soon as I receive it. Bai Ye, 1-1. She felt that she had to explain to this guy about the strange matter of bestowing a marriage. Chapter 133, Chapter 133, This king likes to bite you. Chapter 133, This king likes to bite you. Then, about Kinkin's bestowment, I think your highness should reconsider. Qian, White Knight organized his words, hoping to break off this ridiculous bestowment. No need. Yu Zhekong didn't wait for her to finish and replied directly. Bai Ye's brows raised slightly, and Yu Zhekong reached out to caress them. This is what I'm asking for, there's nothing to consider. If you're dissatisfied with this, you can only bear with it. But I don't want to, I'm afraid. I can't bear it. You don't have power or strength, but I have power and strength. Do you think you can win if you resist? Yu Zhekong's sharp question crushed Bai Ye's temper instantly. What are you planning? Bai Ye did not understand. Could it be that this guy wanted her to mold him? In any case, she didn't think that he had any feelings for her, and she was sure that this idiot who didn't even know what a dudu was definitely didn't know what a was. Then, he must have had other motives for doing this. Could it be that Jian was also doing it for the Bai Clan Heart Sutra? Bai Ye's eyes darkened slightly. If that was really the case, then we've I'm after you. As Yu Zhekong spoke, he nibbled Bai Ye's earlobe when she wasn't paying attention. Be good, I'm going to the palace now. We'll talk later. You're still coming. Bai Ye furrowed his brows and dodged. Was this guy done? Yu Zhekong raised an eyebrow. This is my type. You have to get used to it. Get lost. Bai Ye gritted his teeth and chased him away. She swore that she would quickly develop a new poison when she got back. She did not believe that she could not defeat this guy, let alone poison him to death. Bite, 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 bite your grandpa. He. Yu Zhekong raised his hand and pinched Bai Ye's face before leaving reluctantly. At the same time, he shouted, Go back, don't send me off. I'll be back tonight. As soon as he said this, the servants and guards of the Yun family nearby, as well as Gu Changhe and the others who were waiting at the original spot, all subconsciously agreed that this was the promise that Yu Zhekong had made to Bai Ye when the couple were stuck together. Bai Ye glared at Yu Zhekong's back. He really wanted to go up and kick him in the back. But dash. Endure. Bai Ye clenched his fist and told himself this, because she knew very well that if she really went up to him, he would definitely take advantage of her even more, and then his lovey-dovey act would be known to everyone. Therefore, after trying her best to calm herself down, Bai Ye immediately turned around and returned to the residence of Yun. She was prepared to work hard to develop her poison business. At the same time, Yu Zhekong, who was getting ready to board the royal carriage, looked up at a mansion opposite the residence of Yun. Check whose house it is. Yes. Yu Zhekong then boarded the carriage and left. In the house that Yu Zhekong had his eyes on, Qing Xianying's legs went weak and she sat on the ground. In front of her was the telescope that she had dropped in shock. That look just now. It was so scary. Demon God. When Qing Xianying recalled those red eyes, she felt as if she had seen a terrifying demonic god. Her mind and soul were almost crushed. It's too terrifying, Hua. Ge. Qing Xianying called out in a panic, only to find that her voice was very hoarse and trembling. Her entire back was drenched in sweat. And the one standing beside Qing Xianying was Qing Xiantian. Ye stared blankly at Bai Ye, his fiancée of Qing Xiantian, who was being held in another man's arms affectionately and teased in various ways. With a crack he crushed the telescope in his hand. Chapter 134, Chapter 134, I'm an unbreakable legend. Chapter 134, I'm an unbreakable legend. In Qing Xianheaven's memories, even if he and Bai Ye were childhood sweethearts, even if the former Bai Ye was full of admiration for him, the most intimate action between them was only limited to holding hands. We still have an engagement, are you in such a hurry to throw yourself into Yu Zhekong's arms? Do you think that by bestowing a marriage, you can completely destroy the marriage contract between us? In your dreams. Qing Xiantian crushed the window in front of him with one palm. Brother. Qing Xianying was shocked again. But Qing Xiantian pulled her along and left the house, because he knew that they had been discovered by Yu Zhekong. The latter would find their way here very soon, and it was not safe to stay here any longer. However, the scenes that they had just seen were already unbearable for Qing Xianheaven. He didn't expect things to turn out like this. Yu Ninefold's forceful intervention had caused a lot of trouble for his original plan. However, Yingluo a talent in all 5 elements, with a talent of 10 stars in wood and fire. Your talent can even cause a heavenly vision. Yair Zhenzhen, do you think that you have attracted the attention of the dynasty? Do you think that I can't control you and do nothing to you because of your talent? Qing Xiantian recalled Qing Xianying's report, and the gloominess in his eyes became more and more intense. And at that moment, in the main courtyard of the residence of Yun, Fang Er, your second brother has told me everything. Listen to me and don't interact with her too much. Report to the Ministry of Heavenly Troops tomorrow. Yun Chongming had originally felt that he could not bear to let his youngest son, who was the most talented, suffer in the ministry of heavenly troops. However, since such a thing had happened, Yun Chongming felt that the ministry of heavenly troops was the best place for Yun Fang. Let's wait a little longer, we have to wait for the marriage to be bestowed. However, Yun Fang was not willing to leave early the next morning. He knew very well that once he went to the ministry of heavenly troops, he would not be able to see Bai Ye for at least 3 to 5 years. You child, why are you making a fuss? Yun Chongming shook his head. Father, I know what I'm doing, Yun Fang insisted. Yun Chongming sighed softly. Go on. Remember father's words. The 9th prince is not someone you or the Yun family can afford to provoke. Is he really that strong? Yun Fang suddenly looked up at his old father and asked. The hidden unwillingness in his eyes made Yun Chongming feel a little uneasy, and his eyelids twitched. He's definitely stronger than you think. Yun Chongming subconsciously emphasized. If you don't know what the Sumeru divine art represents, I can tell you that the great founding emperor of Tianqian dynasty great ancestor Xian relied on the Sumeru divine art to build his great cause. Until now, no one from the outside or inside dares to invade our dynasty because they fear the great ancestor who might still be alive. And the actual ruler of the Heavens Will Mansion is the great ancestor emperor. The 9th prince is clearly the successor of Emperor Teju, understand? Yun Chongming was afraid that Yun Fang would do something stupid, so he did not care about the news. He blurted out everything that was not suitable for Yun Fang to know. Yun Fang was stunned when he heard that. The ancestral emperor is still alive? This Yingluo, how is this possible? Wouldn't that be a 10,000-year-old monster? This Kazaya was too fake, no one's lifespan could reach this long. It's not entirely impossible. Fang Er, you're still young, and the level you've come into contact with is still very low. When you're older, you'll understand everything I've said today. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask your big brother and second brother. They will explain some things to you. Yun Fang said tiredly. Yes, your child will take his leave. Yun Fang, whose worldview had been turned upside down, slowly left Yun Chongming's study. Sigh, sigh, sigh. After Yun Chongming rested for a while, he went to tell his wife to keep an eye on the backyard to avoid any trouble. However, it would have been fine if he had not confessed. His confession had triggered a tragedy that was almost out of control. Chapter 135, Chapter 135, Chapter 135, It's all trick. Chapter 135, Chapter 135, It's all trick. That night, Bai Ye, who was in seclusion in the room to research poison, suddenly looked up at the window, and then dash. Swish. A gust of wind pierced through the paper window and shot right in front of White Knight. Bai Ye reached out and naturally caught a dart. At the end of the dart, there was a neatly folded letter, just like how it was often shown on TV. It's the same routine, can't you change it to something new? Bai Ye speechlessly threw the dart to the side and continued to study the poison. Because she was too familiar with this trick. Wasn't it to lure her out and then set a trap to deal with her? Bai Ye felt that only the Crown Prince's party would be able to send a dart to the Yun family. As for why the Crown Prince wanted to do this, although Bai Ye was late to go up the stage, her hearing was very good, and she had heard everything she needed to hear. You two brothers can take your time, I don't have time to play with you. Bai Ye did not want to join in the battle for the throne at all. This had nothing to do with her. She still had a load of things to do. Miss Bai. The guard who had obviously failed in his duty called out from the window. It's okay, just block these more. I don't have time for them. Bai Ye replied and continued to study the poison. She had to make Yu Zhekong the poison. Hearing this, the guard outside the window heaved a sigh of relief. In fact, he had already caught a large number of darts outside just now. The contents of these darts were the same. Bai Ye, your grandfather Bai Zhan is not dead. He's in the Qing residence. If you want to know the details, come to Stork Tower. The guard muttered to himself and ordered his subordinate to go to Stork Tower to check. However, what the young guard did not know was that when Bai Ye had finished replying to him and was about to continue working on the poison, a sharp dagger was pressed against her neck. Why don't you read the letter? It was a female voice that had deliberately changed her voice. White Knight remained silent. Let's go take a look. The person held Bai Ye hostage and made her read the letter on the dart. Bai Ye looked at her and calmly asked, So? You're not going? Seeing her so calm, the person was obviously a little surprised. However, Bai Ye shook his head and said, Yes, Stork Tower, right? I'll be there in a while. Miss Bai, please. Zifeng's voice came from outside the window again. He had obviously heard something. When he recalled the contents of the letter, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. Bang. Zifeng, who sensed that something was wrong, immediately kicked the door open and entered the room. However, The moment he entered the room, he saw Bai, who was rubbing his neck, getting up from the ground. Miss Bai, it seems that you're just an ordinary guard. These people still let me read the letter. Let's go to Stork Tower. Bai said as he waved the letter in his hand. Upon hearing this, Suibo reported awkwardly, "Don't worry, Miss Bai. I've already sent people to investigate. I believe there will be news very soon. It's better for you to wait at the Yun family's house. Inform your king to go to Stork House too. I think it's more reliable this way." However, Bai had his own plans. It was fine if she did not see the letter, but since she had seen it, she would go out. This was clearly the Yun family's intention. Dart's accident could be explained as the Yun family's lack of protection, and if he went alone, it meant that he deliberately let it go. However, the Yun family didn't have any ill intentions toward her so far, so she would go and take a look because this meant that the news might be true. Although Xiaoling said it was impossible, what if? Even she could reincarnate in another body, what else was impossible in this world? Chapter 136, Chapter 136, Chapter 136 Attack Together. Chapter 136, Chapter 136 Attack Together. Lu Manor. Sir, the target has left the mansion. All right, tell the men of sacrifice to finish this within 15 minutes. Lu Ming stood up as soon as he finished speaking. He then took his long sword and prepared to leave the residence for the palace. 15 minutes was the longest he could delay you ninefold. Yes, my lord. The messenger accepted the order and retreated. Lu Ming then left the residence and headed straight for the palace. He knew that Yu Zhong's men must have already reported the news. There wasn't much time left for him to deal with them. It wasn't that he didn't think about directly cutting off Yu Zhong's subordinates' way of reporting to him. However, Lu Ming eventually felt that this was an unwise move, as he did not think that he could cut off Yu Zhong's information network by himself. I hope that this time, His Highness the Crown Prince's obstinacy will really get him what he wants. I'm old, and I can only do this one more time. Lu Ming sighed and disappeared into the night. Lu Ming was already disheartened after losing the competition for the Wolf Cavalry Army. Now that Yu Fusu refused to listen to his advice, Lu Ming had no other choice. He could only do his best to help the Crown Prince fulfill his wish. It would be good if they could succeed. If it didn't work, it would be good to be in a Kazaya. After this, the Yun family will definitely not join Yu Zhong's camp. This is an unexpected surprise. Lu Ming, who was advancing in the darkness like the wind, was extremely surprised that the Yun family's matriarch had actually let him do as he pleased and even indirectly helped him to get things done. It seems that femme fatale is right. The Yun family's mistress probably still hates Bai Ye for taking her son's jade pendant even though he was in a relationship with Yu Zhong. Lu Ming had always been good at making use of people's hearts. This time, in order to protect his youngest son Yun Fang, Yun Kongming's decision to tell his wife, Guo Wanhui, about the relationship between Yun Fang and Bai Ye was the biggest mistake he had ever made since he took over the Yun family. If that was not the case, Yun Chongming was sure that the current matriarch of the Yun family, Guo Wanhui, would not have let his people take action against Bai Ye. And under these two undercurrents, there was clearly another wave of people who wanted to take advantage of the chaos to attack White Knight. Take this opportunity to cripple her. Do things cleanly and don't leave any clues behind. Whether it's the Crown Prince or the Ninth Prince, they're not people we can offend. You should know that the anger of either of them is enough to destroy my Azure Cloud Mansion and your Wind Parasol Mansion. Qing Xiantian said word by word. I'm very clear about this. If I'm involved, I'll handle it myself. I won't drag down your Azure Cloud Mansion and my Wind Parasol Mansion. But you must remember your promise. You must take good care of my sister for the rest of your life and let my sister step on her head forever. Otherwise, Yingluo's scandal will be exposed to the world. Lu Mingshui was warning and threatening Qing Xiantian. I only have one sister. It doesn't matter how you lie to her, but you'd better lie to her for the rest of your life. No matter what plans you have, remember the promise you made to me, Lu Mingshui. You know best where I come from, so don't ruin your life. Don't worry, Qing Xiantian agreed. He knew that Lu Mingshui's background was not simple. This was also the reason why he wanted to cooperate with Lu Mingshui. As for lying to Lu Mingjian for a lifetime, he did not think that it would be difficult. As long as he could achieve his wish. He did not hesitate. Chapter 137, Chapter 137, Chapter 137 Ambush. Chapter 137, Chapter 137 Ambush. Bai Ye had already brought the guard and the others to Stork House. Miss Bai, this is the layout of Stork House that you wanted. Following White Knight's request, Zifeng found her a detailed map of the Stork House. Okay, thank you. Bai Ye took the map and asked at the same time, how's the investigation going, are there any arrangements over there? The situation is a little strange. Zifeng replied. Oh? What do you mean? Baya looked at the map while listening to Zifeng's explanation. Since she had decided to go, she had to understand as much information as possible in the shortest time possible so that she could deal with any changes that might happen next. This was her work habit. The entire storehouse was cleared in the name of Lu Ming, the master of the Crown Prince, but there was no one in it. Even the original shopkeeper and waiter of the storehouse were all cleared out. Therefore, Zifeng felt that this matter was very strange. The Crown Prince's teacher. When Baya heard this first piece of news, he immediately sensed something unusual. He attacked so openly. It seems that this matter is really a little mysterious. After all, during the day, the Crown Prince had already been embarrassed and humiliated by Yu Juchang's failure to snatch his wife. Logically speaking, the Crown Prince should definitely be careful at this time, or it would definitely have a bad influence. That's right. Even if they wanted to make a move, they would definitely try their best to clean themselves up. However, they don't have any taboos now, so I'm worried about Jian. Zifeng actually wanted to suggest to Baya to wait for Yu Zhekong to come back before making a move. What about Lord Lu, do you know where he is? However, since Chiroya had decided to attend the meeting, she wouldn't just wait for Yu Zhekong to appear and solve the problem. This wasn't her style. According to the report, he entered Stork Tower 2 hours ago. This was also one of Zifeng's concerns, because the report said that Lu Ming was in Stork Tower. However, the people he arranged did not manage to find out that Lu Ming was in the building. In this case, Zifeng did not recommend Baya to enter Stork Tower. However, when White Knight was preparing to set off, he had already tried to persuade him many times to no avail, so he could not say anything now. Tell me about Lu Ming's specific situation. Baya put away the blueprint as soon as she finished her sentence. At that moment, the complete structure of Stork Tower was already in her mind. After Zifeng's introduction, Baya put himself in the Crown Prince's shoes and finally confirmed it. He asked, so, the Qing family really did join the Crown Prince's side. This was also the reason why Baya insisted on going regardless of what Zifeng said. Previously, she simply didn't want to get involved in the fight for imperial power, so she didn't think much about it. But when she started thinking, she remembered that Xiaoling had once said that she would only tell her half of the story of Bai Zhan's death when her cultivation reached the mystical king stage. Then, was the other half of the story related to the Qing family's background, which was the Crown Prince. If it was Yingluo, then the news that the other party had said that Bai Zhan was still alive was more likely to be true. Not bad. Zifeng nodded in confirmation. All right, he said. Baya nodded and did not ask any more questions. Instead, she closed her eyes to rest. However, she really wanted to ask Xiaoling some questions right now to confirm whether her speculations were correct. However, she discovered that Xiaoling was sleeping the entire time and could not be woken up at all. Ever since Yu Zhekong got close to me, Ferbal has been lying dead. He's still not awake even now, Baya said, feeling speechless. If it wasn't for the fact that Little Ling's overall condition seemed different from before, Baya would have thought that she was going to die. However, before White Knight could finish ridiculing her, she suddenly sensed a murderous aura. Kill. Chapter 138, Chapter 138, Chapter 138 Ambush. Chapter 138, Chapter 138 Ambush. As the word kill burst out in unison, a large area of terrifying killing intent surged toward White Knight and the others like a tidal wave. Get into formation. Almost at the same time, Zifeng had already gotten into formation to face the enemy. When Baya lifted the curtain to take a look, he could clearly see more than a dozen black shadows shooting out at that moment. In front of them, there were already 20 to 30 sword lights. He slashed down with a shua-shua sound. Miss Bai, please follow me. Zifeng was obviously very familiar with this kind of situation. He immediately led Baya out of the beast carriage and quickly brought her away from the encirclement. The entire process only took about 2 to 3 minutes. Baya was basically out of the danger zone. This speed was enough to show that Yu-Ninefold's subordinates were very well trained. Stop, he said. White Knight suddenly shouted. Miss Bai. Zifeng, who was about to take the opportunity to escort Baya back to the residence of Yun, looked at Baya guiltily. He thought to himself, this future princess consort who's very good at divination can't possibly know what I'm thinking about, right? That was too awesome. His Kazeya had not even shown any signs of returning to the residence of Yun. Could it be that the future princess consort could read minds? That's a little scary, Ying. Something's wrong. Baya said warily. Zifeng, haha. He really did see through it. I'm finished, Wan. It's too quiet, White Knight said. Zifeng was speechless. He was a little confused. However, after a short while, Zifeng knew what Baya was talking about. He also felt that something was wrong. It was too quiet around them. According to Zifeng's calculations, they were only 100 miles away from the scene of the battle. They should have been able to sense the battle ahead, but they couldn't. Moreover, they were near the stork house, so there should be a lot of people, but there was no breath of living people around. There are some strange fluctuations nearby. Through her own perception, Baya could vaguely sense some regular auras surrounding them. This feeling was a little similar to the aura fluctuations she had sensed when she entered the teleportation array. Is it an array? Baya asked, but when he turned around, he found Zifeng had disappeared. Baya, Zhen she knew that there was a big problem, because Zifeng would never leave her alone. There was only one possibility, and that was that Zifeng had been taken away by force, or he had been killed. All the irrelevant people have left, come out. White Knight said to the air indifferently. She believed that the other party had gone through so much trouble to get her out and take away the people around her just so that they could be alone with each other. Now was the time. Clap, 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 clap. The sound of applause was heard, accompanied by a voice that Baya recognized. Miss Bai is so courageous, as expected of our dynasty's most talented female hero. Baya looked over and saw the Crown Prince Yufusu in a bright yellow Crown Prince's robe. Beside the latter was an expressionless, blind, middle-aged man without eyes. This person's cultivation level was very high. Without waiting for Shiroya to see clearly. Swish. Blind man pounced on White Knight in an instant. See. Shiroya's pupils constricted, but he reacted at the same time. Swish, a cloud of grayish-green mist was precisely scattered by White Knight in the direction of the blind man's pounce, almost at the same time as the blind man approached White Knight. Chapter 139, Chapter 139, Chapter 139 Rage of the White Knight. Chapter 139, Chapter 139 Rage of the White Knight. Buzz. At the same time, Baya had also channeled all of her profound chi through the Bai Clan Heart Sutra and gathered it madly on her legs. This allowed her to burst out with an even more terrifying speed in an instant, and she retreated far away with a swish. The blind man's claw only managed to catch the grayish-green mist. As for Baya, she had already retreated tens of miles away. It was the street floor that was sizzling and smoking. It was a sign that White Knight's high speed had caused sparks to fly. This speed not only dazzled the Crown Prince's eyes, but it also shocked the blind man. The explosive power of a speed close to that of a mystical king? The blind man narrowed his white eyes, which had no eyeballs, and stared. Due to his excessive shock, he actually didn't notice that the grayish-green poisonous mist that he thought was dispersed by his celestial chi actually adhered to his fist and instantly drilled into his flesh and blood. Pa pa pa. At the same time, the Crown Prince, Yufusu, clapped again and said, Miss Bai's speed is indeed impressive. As expected of your outstanding talent. Good. Very good. You have the right to bear this prince a child. Hearing this, Bai's brows raised, almost thinking that he had heard wrong. After all, the man didn't seem to be using her to deal with Yu Zhekong, but to make her bear his child. Is Yingluo sick? Yufusu's next words proved that he was sick. Don't worry, this prince won't mistreat you. When you give birth to a boy, even if your status isn't good, this prince will still give you the position of a concubine after I ascend the throne. As Yufusu spoke, he sized up Baya and started to criticize him again. It's a little small, but it shouldn't be a problem for you to give birth. Is your period here? There was only one thing she wanted to do now, and that was to dig out Yufusu's eyes so that he and the blind man beside him would be the same type of master and servant. What the hell is this? All right, Uncle Blind, hurry up and do it. Uncle said that you have to finish this within 15 minutes. If you dawdle any longer, this prince will not have time to do anything. Yufusu thought that the blind man had failed to catch Baya because he was waterproof. However, the truth was. Plop. The blind man fell to the ground. Yufusu was dumbfounded. He did not expect his half-step mysterious king realm servant to die in a single move. I'm afraid I can't let the crown prince have his way. Baya had already expected this and looked at Yufusu. She did not expect Yufusu to be planning to destroy her before the imperial edict even if he could not marry her on the surface. After all, after she was F***ed by the crown prince, no matter what the reason was, under whatever circumstances, she, Baya, would not be suitable to be Yu Zhekong's princess consort. It was very likely that because what was done, she might even be given to the crown prince as a concubine. Even if she was talented. However, judging from how this group of people had been able to settle her marriage so easily during the day, Shiroya felt that this might really happen. When Baya thought of this, his eyes instantly turned dark. You should just die. As soon as Baya finished speaking, he attacked Yufusu with a hidden dark flame in his palm at lightning speed. Did they all think that she was easy to bully? Go to hell. Chapter 140, Chapter 140, Challenging the Mysterious King, L. Chapter 140, Challenging the Mysterious King, L. Yufusu, who had been shocked by the sudden KO, was jolted awake by the sudden attack. However, it was obvious that he could not dodge in time. Not good. Yufusu did not expect Baya to attack him directly. After all, he had thought that his old blind slave would help him deal with Baya. However, the result was completely beyond his expectations, which made him panic a little. Swish. When Baya's fatal palm was about to land on Yufusu's face, his survival instinct allowed him to instantly react in a life-saving manner that he, a first-grade mystic cultivator of the imperial family, should have. Golden Dragon Sky Roar. Yufusu, who had been forced into a corner, immediately used all his strength to launch the strongest counter-attack he could. A faint golden dragon phantom roared with a dragon's might and collided with Baya's palm. The golden dragon fire palms collided with each other violently and instantly set off a violent energy tide. What shocked Baya was that the golden dragon triggered by Yufusu suddenly split into countless little golden dragons, or more accurately, little golden snakes. As soon as they appeared, they voraciously tore at White Knight. This move changed too quickly, and White Knight had no time to react. One after another, the little golden snakes bit White Knight in an instant. White Knight was completely enveloped by the golden light in an instant, and a giant dragon's phantom appeared again. As for White Knight Tadpole, she was clearly Swano Morn or CNE Giant Aragon. Devour. When Yufusu saw that White Knight had been hit, he immediately took advantage of his victory and detonated the entire giant dragon phantom. White Knight's body suddenly exploded with a terrifying sound, and the surrounding buildings felt like they were being blown away. Waves of array fluctuations were also making AOAO sounds. Apparently, some kind of array in this place couldn't bear the crazy energy explosion. Phew. He should be heavily injured. Yufusu heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Baya had been tricked. To be honest, he was really a little afraid of White Knight's attack just now. Because the latter had just knocked down his half-step mysterious king old servant in front of him. It felt very strong. Just as Yufusu heaved a sigh of relief, he dash. Boom. He was hit in the chest by a super-fast white hand. White Knight. Baya, who had emerged from the explosion, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth while saying faintly, Die. CC. Yufusu's pupils constricted as he glared at Baya. He had never expected that White Knight would be fine under his strongest attack. Second, he could not believe that White Knight really wanted to kill him. Was he going to be finished with Yingluo? Buzz. Yufusu was completely flustered. He didn't want to die. However, at this moment, he could clearly feel that a very terrifying aura had already invaded his body from the palm that was pressed against his chest. Even though he was wearing a super strong soft armor, he couldn't resist it at all. It's over, Yingluo. Is he going to be finished? No. If you don't, you can't kill me. I'm the crown prince. You can't provoke Yufusu. What? However, White Knight realized that something was wrong at this moment. At the same time dash. Chapter 141, Chapter 141, Challenging the Mysterious King, 2. Chapter 141, Challenging the Mysterious King, 2. When the wyvern nether flame burned Yufusu's soft armor dash. Swish. Yufusu's body suddenly rose into the air, and with a bang, a beautiful signal bomb exploded. CC. Baya's pupils narrowed, and he knew that the matter was going to be tricky. The dynasty's experts were definitely coming soon. The reason why she had dared to attack Yufusu was because she knew that since Yufusu was going to do something dirty, he would not have a super expert sent by the dynasty to protect the crown prince. But now, Yingluo. As soon as the signal flare was fired, White Knight knew that such a strong person was coming. And such a powerful existence was not something she could defeat with the corpse G pill. That's right, that blind half-step profound king was knocked down by Baya using the corpse G pill. The main component of this poison came from the corpse G in Gu Changhe's body back then. However, according to Baya's assessment, this kind of poison should have no effect on the top powerhouses of the dynasty. Swish. Baya's eyes darkened as he pushed even more of the Stygian dark flames toward Yufusu. Anyway, she had already offended Yufusu today. Rather than letting the tiger return to the mountain, she might as well kill him directly. As for being discovered by the experts of the Lord Dynasty. So what? Chi-chi. As White Knight's Stygian nether flame grew more and more powerful, Yufusu, who had been completely sucked in by Baya's palm, was already melting from the heat. His protective armor was beginning to crack. As the crown prince, Yufusu's soft armor was considered a top-tier defensive treasure in the dynasty. Kaka. White Knight's wyvern nether flame instantly burned the soft armor. Arg. Yufusu only truly experienced the burning pain after losing the protection of her soft armor. I'm finished, Hwawa. At that moment, Yufusu felt that he was really done for. He was going to be roasted into ashes. He was going to be done for. The Crown Prince and Qian were going to be done for. Yufusu's eyes were wide open as he stared at Baiye. He could not understand how she dared to do this in his final moments. How could she dare to kill him, the Crown Prince? Was she not afraid? However, before Yufusu could figure it out, he felt an icy cold sensation on his head. The layers of coldness instantly extinguished Yufusu's burning pain. However, the stimulation of both fire and ice still made him pass the lying dead state that he could not stand. Baiye, whose entire body was wrapped in a layer of faint, pure white flames, was currently locked in a confrontation with an old man dressed in a dark blue palace robe. This old man was none other than Luan, the mystical king that Yukinyi had appointed to protect Yufusu, whom Baiye had guessed. You dare to assassinate the Crown Prince? Luan carried the dying Yufusu and stared sharply at Baiye. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that this little girl dared to kill the Crown Prince. If he hadn't arrived in time, he believed that the Crown Prince would have died, because this girl had really killed him. She had no intention of leaving any room for negotiation. However, what shocked Luan the most was Dash. He's only a first-grade mystic cultivator, yet he can beat the Crown Prince, who's a first-grade mystic cultivator, without any power to fight back. This little girl Yingluo is indeed a demon with a talent index that surpasses Qinban. During the day, Luan had also seen the commotion caused by Baiye's detonation. However, at that time, Luan was only shocked by Baiye's talent. But now, hoo-hoo. Chapter 142, Chapter 142, Challenging the Mysterious King, 3. Chapter 142, Challenging the Mysterious King, 3. He was shocked by White Knight's combat strength. This girl. Boom. At this moment, Baiye did something that shocked Luan even more. They were attacking him. Swish. Baiyesu raised her hand, and while Luan was still in shock, she shot a small white flame toward him. CC. Luan's pupils shrank, and he was a little angry ignorant. The words fell. Luan's entire body released a powerful mystical king pressure. The profound king's powerful pressure was like a giant battle of Mount Tai, instantly crushing the small flame that Baiye had shot out. At the same time, it ruthlessly crushed Baiye's body with an aura that could destroy dried branches and rotten wood. A pain that felt like his entire body was about to burst caused White Knight to spit out a large mouthful of blood with a pt. It was obvious that Luan was really angry, which was normal. After all, he was a mystical king. A little mystical warrior like Baiye actually dared to attack him. This was clearly an insult and provocation to him. Not directly crushing White Knight to death was already Luan cherishing talent. Baiye, who had vomited 3 mouthfuls of blood in a row, stared at Luan with a dark gaze. He even at the same time. Woof. Whoosh. 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 Countless spiritual auras surged out of White Knight's limbs and bones. Under the control of the Heart Sutra, they surged out of her body. A powerful spiritual aura energy was instantly detonated out of Baiye's petite body. Luan could clearly see layers of faint spiritual aura rising from Baiye's body. As soon as this aura came out of Suanji, Baiye's back, which had been bent by Luan's pressure, suddenly straightened. Luan could even feel his pressure being swept back this Kazaya. I want him dead. Baiye said as he walked towards Luan. The unconcealed killing intent in her eyes toward the Crown Prince, Yufusu, made Luan's heart tremble. F***CKU. Luan couldn't imagine how such a young girl could gather such a strong killing intent. Furthermore, what exactly did Suanji's Crown Prince do to make this child insist on killing the Crown Prince even when he was facing his powerful pressure? I want him dead. White Knight emphasized once again without hiding anything, and she was even condensing her attack. Enough, calm down. Luan shouted. He was about to scold Baiye for calming down, but Baiye laughed sarcastically enough. How was that possible? Do you know that he wants to ruin my innocence here? Do you know that he wants to imprison me and force me to give birth to his child? On what basis? Just because he's the Crown Prince, and even if I'm extremely talented, he can still abuse me, and I can't resist? Just because he's the Crown Prince and has the protection of a powerful expert, while I don't. If I'm sent back, then I deserve it, and he can be saved. You can even tattle on me and hold me responsible for assassinating the Crown Prince. Wan, Luan replied. He was a little embarrassed by Baiye's repeated questions. He could almost instantly confirm that everything Baiye said was true. The Crown Prince, Yufusu, that idiot, really planned to treat this little girl this way. Otherwise, why would the Crown Prince, who was so afraid of death, try to send him away? And he was stunned. Originally, he was indeed prepared to report to the Emperor and let the Emperor investigate White Knight's assassination. I will report this matter truthfully. The Emperor is wise and has his own judgment. You don't have to worry, Qian. Luan didn't know what to say, so he could only reply dryly. In addition, he was startled. You can't kill the Crown Prince, at least not by yourself. Otherwise, even if you're in the right, you'll have to bear the blame you can't bear. Luan couldn't help but remind him. He won't die if I don't kill him. Bai Ye said insistently, as if he wouldn't rest until he died. Chapter 143, Chapter 143, Chapter 143 Complete Victory. Chapter 143, Chapter 143 Complete Victory. Luan, can't this girl tell that I'm telling her this for her own good? If he doesn't die, I'll die sooner or later. White Knight said as he pressed on. Luan frowned slightly. Thinking about the Crown Prince's vengeful personality, he almost nodded, but he held back and subconsciously thought of a way for Bai Ye. I will also mention this matter to the Emperor. I believe the Emperor will make arrangements. Hearing this, Bai Ye suddenly retracted his aura and bowed to Luan. Thank you, Senior. Luan didn't know how to react for a moment, but then he understood. You silly girl. Luan looked Bai Ye up and down and couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. You're indeed the 9th prince's favorite. You're so smart. Even my emotions are being led by you. Bai Ye said, Wan, she didn't say anything and just kept bowing. Forget it, everything this old man said just now counts, you can go back in peace. Luan waved his hand and said. He had admitted defeat. Otherwise, what would he do? He had only just realized that from the moment he appeared, he had been led by the nose by White Knight's extreme emotions. Bai Ye used her actions and words to control this conversation, holding the initiative in the negotiation, making him subconsciously fight for many good conditions for her. He promised not to tell on her, he promised to put in a good word for her, he promised to remind the Emperor to leave her a way out, all of these were his willingly promises without him knowing. If Bai Ye hadn't suddenly given up at the end, Luan felt that he would never have known that he had been tricked by this girl and had directly fallen into her trap. Many thanks for Senior's magnanimity, Junior had no choice but to do this. How should I address Senior? Bai Ye straightened his back and looked at Luan gratefully. I'm Luan, you can call me Old Lu. Alright, this old man still has to bring the Crown Prince back for treatment, you can go back now. Although Luan had been tricked by Bai Ye, he obviously had a good impression of him. Bai Ye is here to see you off, Elder Lu. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, Bai Ye did not dawdle any longer. Luan smiled and left with the Crown Prince. Before he left, he sent out a gust of wind with his palm and shattered the strange aura that had surrounded Bai Ye. Zhu Wanjai's men have been scattered by the 9 labyrinths formation. I've broken the formation and they'll find you soon. Just you wait. Luan's voice came from far away, but he had already disappeared. Thank you, Old Lu. Bai Ye expressed his gratitude once again. She was also very certain that she had not misjudged him. In fact, it was just as Luan had thought. Bai Ye had been scheming against him ever since he had appeared. Oh no, it should be even earlier. When Bai Ye knew that she might not be able to kill Yu Fusu, she had already started planning. That was why she was not afraid of being found out that she wanted to kill the Crown Prince. As for why he had to reveal it himself in the end, White Knight also had his own considerations. This kind of person with such a high cultivation base can't be an idiot. He just hasn't reacted yet, but he will sooner or later. Instead of waiting for him to figure it out and then be hated, it's better to confess now. It'll win him a good impression. Shiroya understood it clearly. It's a pity that grandfather's matter seems to be fake. Bai Ye sighed softly and was prepared to wait for the array fluctuations around him to dissipate before returning to his residence to bid farewell to Yun Fang. The 9 palace bewildering formation slowly disappeared. Swish. A red shadow descended from the sky like a ghost. He threw a huge cloth bag that emitted a strange aura at White Knight. White Knight's vision turned black. Chapter 144, Chapter 144, My wife is the best. Chapter 144, My wife is the best. She was covered. Collect. Lu Mingshui, who had succeeded in her surprise attack, immediately pulled in the net. The cloth bag that was covering Bai Ye was shrunk to the size of a palm by Lu Mingshui with a swish, and she directly took away Baiyan. Bai Ye, who was trapped in this strange cloth bag, felt a strong suppression force surge into her mind in an instant, making her feel dizzy. He had completely lost consciousness. Buzz, the 9 palace soul confusing array was finally completely disintegrated. Zufeng, who had disappeared mysteriously, was actually near where White Knight had been. Unfortunately, White Knight had already disappeared, so Zufeng still couldn't find him. Lu Mingshui, who had successfully caught Bai Ye, had obviously escaped. Shua Shua. At this moment, there were still quite a number of black shadows scattered around Zufeng. They were the secret guards who had protected Bai Ye's escape just now. Their appearance also meant that Lu Ming's men of sacrifice were all dead. 9-1, quickly report to His Highness that Miss Bai has disappeared in the Nine Palace Bewildering Formation. Before they disappeared, there were experts at the Profound King Realm and above who appeared in the formation. Zufeng ordered. Yes. One of the guards immediately went to report to Yu Zhekong. The rest of you, follow me to the Lu residence. Zufeng ordered. This was because there was only one person in the imperial city who could set up the Nine Palatial Maze formation, the Crown Prince's master, Lu Ming. Therefore, Zufeng believed that Lu Ming was the one who sent people to cause Bai Ye's disappearance. Just as Luan was carrying the Crown Prince back to the imperial city. Luan, who was flying forward at full speed, was blocked by a tall black shadow when he approached the palace. Your Highness. Luan immediately recognized the person in front of him. It was Yu Zhekong. He instinctively raised his guard and pulled the dying Yu Fusu behind him to protect her. Even though Luan knew that it wouldn't be difficult for the young man in front of him to kill the Crown Prince, he couldn't just give up on himself and ignore the Crown Prince's life. He didn't expect that. You were beaten by Xiao Ye. Yu Zhekong's opening speech was this. Luan narrowed his eyes and nodded. That's right. It was that girl. Hearing this, Yu Zhekong's furrowed brows relaxed, and a proud smile bloomed on his face. Luan was a little speechless. Speaking of which, even if you're proud of your wife's combat power, don't be so open and laugh so wildly in front of him, the Crown Prince's guardian. However, this was not the end. What made Luan even more speechless was. I don't want father to know that it was Ye who did this. Old Lu, you should know what to save, right? Yu Zhekong's directly threatened. Luan replied, Yingluo, can he say that he's not lying? After all, I'm definitely going to marry Ye. I can't let this idiot affect the harmony between me and my father. As Yu Zhekong spoke, he glanced at Yu Fusu indifferently. In fact, Yu Zhekong had really wanted to kill this idiot. However, just as he was about to make his move, he suddenly realized that he didn't need to do anything unnecessary. This was because he had just seen clearly that even if he did not make a move, the fiendish fire that White Knight had left in this fool's body would slowly torture him to death. What a pure flame aura. It seems like this little thing is hiding a lot of good stuff. Yu Zhekong's eyes naturally turned red at the thought. Chapter 145, Chapter 145, Chapter 145, I'll protect my wife. Chapter 145, Chapter 145, I'll protect my wife. Reporting to Your Highness. The secret guard 91, who was sent by Zufeng to deliver the news, came to report at this time. Speak, he said. When Yu Zhekong heard that it was Bai Ye's secret guard, he ignored the fact that Luan was still present. Miss Bai. 91, who had come to report, was about to tell him everything that Zufeng had told him, but he had just said missing when he felt his vision blur. And then, Yu Zhekong and Luan appeared at the place where Bai Ye had disappeared with a whoosh. The girl's aura suddenly disappeared completely before the formation was about to completely dissipate. As a mystical king, Luan's powerful consciousness allowed him to instantly sense some of the circumstances of Bai Ye's disappearance. However, Yingluo. It was wrong. It's the aura of the spirit suppression bag. Luan suddenly sensed a subtle aura that was very wrong. Luan's eyes twitched when he identified the source of the aura. It was a spirit suppression bag. It was a spiritual treasure that could be used to kill demonic beasts of 3rd grade and above. It had a powerful soul-absorbing effect on the soul of demonic beasts. Any 3rd grade magical beast, once trapped by the soul-suppressing pouch, would not be able to escape. They would eventually be tamed into fools, and then they would either be killed or trapped in the deep courtyard, becoming foolish killers guarding the backyard, no longer possessing any intelligence. In other words, Chi-Chi. Who's so vicious to want to destroy this child? Luan's face turned pale because he knew very well that Bai Ye did not suddenly disappear completely. It was very likely that he had been captured by someone using a soul-suppressing bag. However, White Knight was not a magical beast, so the person who used the soul-suppressing pouch against her must have only one goal: to destroy White Knight. After all, a genius who had become a fool, no matter how high her physical talent index was, without a brain that could comprehend the cultivation path, she was just a waste. She was just a waste. Your Highness, please follow me to the palace as soon as possible so that we can report this to the Emperor and Elder June. The Imperial Court and the Heavens Will Manor will act together, and we should be able to find some clues soon. After all, it's a Bayan. It's too late. Yu Zhekong rejected Luan's suggestion. Without waiting for Luan to persuade her. Elder Lu, please protect me. After saying this, Yu Zhekong sat down cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes. This one. Luan didn't know what Yuju was so important about, but before he could say anything, his pupils contracted when he saw Swish. Yuju Kong's entire body suddenly started glowing with a golden light. This is Wivyu. Luan stared at the scene in bewilderment. He remembered seeing the scene in an ancient book. The appearance of the scene seemed to mean Su, me. God. Appear. The four magnetic syllables jumped out of Yuju Kong's mouth one by one. It was as if he had been endowed with some kind of magic and was pounding hard on Luan's heart, causing his heart to stop beating unconsciously. The next moment, a dark golden Sumi god appeared from the darkness behind Yuju Kong. Pipa. A dark golden thunderbolt flashed like the wrath of the heavens. The explosion swept across the sky. Chapter 146, Chapter 146, The Ninth Prince is a God. Chapter 146, The Ninth Prince is a God. The sound of thunder shook the entire imperial city in an instant. Everyone was shocked, even Yu Qinyi and Elder Jun, who were in the middle of a conversation. What's going on? Yu Qinyi shouted as he flew out of the hall. Jun Wuming followed closely behind and saw the golden light that filled the sky. It was as if there were thousands of golden meteors falling down on the entire imperial city. The descent of God Sumi. Jun Wuming exclaimed in shock. What? Yu Qinyi was very excited to hear this. As the ruler of the dynasty, he knew very well that no one after Emperor Taizhu had been able to summon the guardian of Tianqian Wangcheo the Meru god. It's that child, ninefold. Something must have happened. Jun Wuming sensed Yuju Kong's aura in the middle of summoning the summoner. Without further ado, he grabbed Yu Qinyi and headed straight for the scene. When they arrived at the scene, God's Eye Yuju Kong had already drawn a complete rune on his forehead with his blood essence. Open. As Yuju Kong's demonic and sexy voice settled, his originally closed eyes opened. Two poppies-like red lights burst out from Yuju Kong's eyes. It's Laoyi. Yu Qinyi was dumbfounded by the sight. Sumi God's possession, this kid can actually transfer the power of God Meru to his own body. He's indeed a freak with the divine body of Nine Yang. He's simply amazing. Jun Wuming didn't know what to say. This was because he knew very well that even the ancestral emperor could not have done such a freakish thing. Guiding the power of God to one's own body sounded very powerful, but how could an ordinary person's body withstand such violent and powerful force? But Yuju Kong could. Good. Oh, my Tianqian dynasty. We have an heir. Yu Qinyi was even more excited than Jun Wuming when he saw this. His aged eyes could not help but tear up. No one knew that the Tianqian dynasty had been living a hard life all these years. The external threat has been worsening, and we're barely holding on with our former foundation, but sooner or later we won't be able to hold on. But it's all fine now, Wivyu. Your Majesty is right. Jun Wuming, who had calmed down a little, agreed with Yu Qinyi's words. What is this kid really doing? Why is there such a huge commotion? There doesn't seem to be any strong enemies nearby, right? Could it be that there's some kind of demon or ghost that even I can't sense? Jun Wuming was a little confused after he carefully scanned his surroundings and realized that there was no danger. Yuju Kong, who was sitting cross-legged like a demon god, suddenly looked towards a certain point in the sky. Then, before Jun Wuming and Yu Qinyi could react, he disappeared with a whoosh. Lu Mingshui, who had kidnapped Bai Ye, instantly felt like he was being watched. This feeling came out of nowhere, but it made her feel a fatal danger. This made her heart tremble and she felt a strong sense of uneasiness. And almost at this moment. Chapter 147, Chapter 147, Chapter 147 Poisoned by Love, He's Here. Chapter 147, Chapter 147 Poisoned by Love, He's Here. A faint green glow crawled out of the spirit-suppressing bag in Lu Mingshui's arms. The uneasy Lu Mingshui felt a sharp pain in her head. It was as if someone had used a huge hammer to smash his head. It was so painful that she vomited a large mouthful of blood on the spot. Lu Mingshui's spirit-suppressing bag opened automatically. Lu Mingshui could clearly sense that her connection with the soul-suppressing bag had been forcefully cut off. And the person who had cut off this connection was none other than the victim White Knight. How could this be possible? Lu Mingshui was in disbelief. It was as if she had seen a ghost as she stared at Bai Ye, who had crawled out of the spirit-suppressing bag. For a moment, she even thought that she was looking at an illusion. Spirit suppression bag, that's a good thing. At this moment, Bai Ye, who had already removed Lu Mingshui's imprint from the spirit-suppressing bag and attached his own spiritual imprint, also received a message from the spirit-suppressing bag. Only then did Bai Ye know that the cloth bag that almost killed her was actually a level 3 spiritual treasure. It had the ability to destroy the intelligence of level 3 and below magical beasts. Swish. However, at this moment, although Lu Mingshui couldn't believe it, she completely understood that she had failed. She wanted to take advantage of the time when Bai Ye was collecting the spirit-suppressing bag to escape. However, only then did she retreat. Whoosh. Ba Ye flicked his finger, and a dark light pierced through Lu Mingshui's knee. Plop! Lu Mingshui fell to the ground on the spot. Blood gushed out from his knees like a fountain and spurted out with a swoosh swoosh sound. However, it wasn't over. Kaka. Ba Ye, who had stepped on Lu Mingshui's body, had crushed her dantian. This caused Lu Mingshui to convulse in pain, and she was stunned by the pain. At the same moment, Ba Ye had already squatted down and held Lu Mingshui's jaw with one hand. At the same time, with a kaka sound, he broke the latter's jaw. However, with a flick of her finger, she hooked out a very, very small poison pill in Lu Mingshui's mouth. White Knight's series of actions were done in one go. At this point, Lu Mingshui, who was in so much pain that she couldn't speak, knew that she had failed to commit suicide. Her dantian being destroyed meant that she couldn't self-destruct her meridians. Since the poison pill was confiscated, it meant that she could not take the poison to commit suicide. But even so, Lu Mingshui, who could not move her lower jaw, actually revealed a stiff and strange smile at Ba Ye. That was because Lu Mingshui saw a gorgeous rose spreading from the wrist of Ba Ye's hand that had taken the poison pill from her mouth. And this rose represented Yingluo. This is a rose. Ba Ye saw it as well. A strangely beautiful rose suddenly appeared on her wrist, and a strange burning sensation spread from her lower abdomen to her whole body. Poison. Aphrodisiac. Ba Ye, who was very familiar with medicine, instantly knew what her body's condition meant. And the Heart Sutra can't expel this poison. Ba Ye's eyelids twitched slightly. He realized that it would not be easy to cure this poison. There was another big problem. The taste of the weeping blood rose isn't bad, right? This area is famous in the imperial city for its brothels and brothels. Lu Mingshui felt that she had achieved her plan. This was because Lu Lanshui believed that as long as the news of Ba Ye being defiled by a group of rough men spread, then even if Ba Ye's talent was still there, she would never be able to live so well in the future. It might even create an inner demon and cripple Qian in the future. Thinking of this, Lu Mingshui, whose voice was distorted due to his broken jaw, kept laughing eerily. Oh, Yu Kong, who had activated the Meru God Eye and quickly locked onto Lu Mingshui's whereabouts, appeared like a god. Chapter 148, Chapter 148, Xiao Ye is like fire. Chapter 148, Xiao Ye is like fire. Immediately after, before Ba Ye, who was already a little dazzled, could see clearly, she was ruthlessly pulled into a certain man's arms with a bang. There was a familiar and elegant aura, like the fragrance of poppy, that immediately entered Ba Ye's senses, causing her to be instantly invigorated. There was even a fire in his body that exploded with a whoosh. A warm current rushed to Ba Ye's head in an instant. It was only for a moment, but Ba Ye, who had originally retained a clear mind, felt his entire head spinning. For a moment, she even lost her consciousness. With her strong willpower, Ba Ye desperately tried to keep herself awake and suppress the poisonous fire and heat in her body. She even wanted to concoct an antidote herself. Just as she was trying her best to free herself from the aphrodisiac's control. What's wrong? Yu Kong, who was holding her tightly in his arms, realized that something was wrong with her. He quickly pulled her out of his arms to take a look, and the result was. See. Yu Kong's face turned as red as a rose in full bloom from the heat of the person in his arms, and he was shocked. Ba Ye's face was originally only the size of a palm. Although his facial features had not fully developed, they were already very delicate. He was usually very eye-catching, but his childishness always reduced his beauty. However, at this moment, when Ba Ye's clear and beautiful eyes became blurred and charming, the refined air hidden in her childishness was like an explosive force, instantly hooking onto her delicate and pretty face. Coupled with her charming face, this made Ba Ye look like a lotus that had just come out of the water, beautiful and beautiful. Refined and delicate. Ye Zhengong stunned Yu Kong. He subconsciously leaned closer to her and held her pretty face in his hand. He stared at her for a moment and felt a strange warmth in his head. However, he did not know that this touch of his head directly shattered Ba Ye's reserved will that he had worked so hard to maintain. Swish. Ba Ye grabbed his hand almost at the same time he made his move, and even buried his face that was burning hot in his palm, rubbing it. She couldn't resist the temptation from the start, and now she was like an octopus, clinging onto Yu Kong's body, who was so close to her. Forget it, Yingluo. What made Yu Kong even more confused was Ba Ye, who was trying her best to burrow into his body, was still sticking tightly to his more sensitive neck. Not only was he blowing hot air at that area, he was also rubbing against it. It was like a ball of soft, warm, and soft waves that were about to melt him. This girl. Something was clearly wrong. However, just as Yu Kong realized this, he felt his neck being bitten. No. To be more accurate, He had been licked. A small, smooth tongue licked his neck. Yu Kong was speechless. He only felt a wisp of numbness, as if it had the medicinal power of a top-grade heart-strengthening pill, run from his neck to his body and consciousness. It made him feel excited. What was going on? Caw. Caw. Yu Kong didn't even have time to reminisce when he clearly felt that warm, smooth little tongue start to lick him. 1 lick. 2 hits. 3 times. Not only did she lick his jaw, but she also mumbled. Chapter 149, Chapter 149, His Highness was forced to kiss. Chapter 149, His Highness was forced to kiss. In the instant Yu Kong was dumbfounded. Baiye, who had completely lost his mind and was completely controlled by the poisonous fire, had already hugged the antidote and bit the lips of the demonic and beautiful prince. And this bite made Baiye's eyes light up instantly, as if a new world had been opened up. Because from the prince's sexy lips, she had sucked out a juice that was like poppy soup for her. The sweet and slightly cool, moist and clean fire-reducing water made Baiye go crazy after tasting it. Woo! Yu Kong's lips were roughly pried open. He had to open his mouth. The other person's hot little hands were pressing his acupuncture points very familiarly, causing him to instinctively open his mouth. That slimy little tongue entered his mouth and took everything from his lips and teeth. She was so hungry that she wanted to chew his lips and tongue and then swallow them. The exciting power of Ge also went deeper and deeper into his limbs and bones. Not only did it make him excited, but it also made him have some kind of desire. And this desire came together. Yu Kong's eyes, which were already red, darkened instantly. Then, he forcefully pulled away the person who had violated him with one hand. Hiss, a flirtatious sound of a hiss was also heard between him and Baiye because of Yu Kong's forceful pull. Baiye, who had lost the fire-extinguishing water, was immediately unhappy. Impatiently, she wrapped her arms around the man's neck and pounced on him again. Yu Kong quickly turned his face to the side, but a certain someone who had lost her mind licked and gnawed on his neck. Yu Kong took in a deep breath and suppressed his desire that was rising. At the same time, he didn't waste his effort in pressing down on the back of the head of the restless girl. At this stage, Yu Kong more or less knew what was going on. Although he had never experienced this before, some things were so obvious that he could understand. However, Baiye was still so young, and most importantly, Yu Kong knew that something must have happened to her, and all he wanted to do was to solve the problem as soon as possible. He was afraid, but his brain was not enough at this moment. It was because the waves of attacks from Baiye were like heat currents that were naturally intoxicating, stirring up wave after wave of heat waves in his sea of consciousness, messing up his thoughts. Yu Kong took in a deep breath, trying to clear his mind, but hiss, the pain on his neck was like a hot stream that was about to erupt from volcano. Yu Kong was stunned again. This isn't the end, Yingluo. What made Yu Kong gasp even more was, with his head pressed down, White Knight, who could not move his head freely, switched to attacking with both hands. Her small hands immediately pried open his shirt roughly and touched his strong chest muscles. Coupled with her dissatisfaction of not getting what she wanted, she bit and bit. Yuju was going crazy. Woo, 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 woo. What was even worse was that because Baiye was being covered so tightly, he naturally had to struggle while touching him. If he couldn't break free, he naturally had to cry out, but this cry was woo, woo, woo. It was soft and sticky, like a cat's whimpering. Yu Kong's heart melted into a mess, and he subconsciously let go of the hand that was holding the back of her head. It's finished. Chapter 150, Chapter 150, Chapter 150 The heavenly lightning triggers the earthly fire. Chapter 150, Chapter 150 The heavenly lightning triggers the earthly fire. Baiye's breathing quickened subconsciously as he let go of her. With the effects of the drug spreading, her breathing was not only fast, but it was also like a fire burning Yu Kong's face that was inches away from his. What was even more fatal was, her lips were swollen from all the sucking, and the moment she raised her head, her lips were right next to Yu Kong's. Her rapid breathing lingered between his lips and teeth. The feeling of being violated just now appeared in Yu Kong's heart all of a sudden. His lips couldn't be controlled at all, as if they were attracted by a magnet, and landed heavily on her soft lips. Yu Kong reached out and grabbed Baiye's jaw, and just like how she pried open his mouth, he pried her mouth open roughly and took revenge on her, taking everything he could. In an instant, Yu Kong was completely won over by the sweetness and softness of her lips and teeth. His desire grew deeper and deeper, almost to the point of exploring her throat. Baiye's body was already burning up and now it was even hotter. She stuck close to Yu Kong and groped around, almost merging herself into his body. For a moment, the heavenly lightning and the earthly fire were enshrouded in dense flames. Lu Mingshui was dumbfounded. In fact, She was already dumbfounded the moment Yu Kong appeared. Because she thought that she had done it very cleanly and had not left behind any aura, so she would definitely not be detected or found by anyone. Yu was back. Lu Mingshui didn't know if he had come by chance or if he had come here on purpose. She didn't have the brain to think about it, but she knew that the problem was big now. He urged the ninth prince to come, Qian, this little B***tch. Not only is Qian fine, but she also got what she wanted. Lu Mingshui was deceived. After all, her plan was to ruin Bai Ye so that she could not marry into the royal family because of her filth, and even more so, she could not integrate into the circle of dignitaries. The fat-headed and big-eared whorehouse that Lu Mingshui had imagined did not appear. Instead, Yu Kong, the top tall, rich, and handsome of the dynasty, appeared. Lu Mingshui knew what went wrong. Her plan could be said to be flawless. Even if this little B***tch was so strange that she could crawl out of the spirit-suppressing bag on her own, she would not be able to escape the fate of being poisoned by the aphrodisiac. Since that was the case, logically speaking, she should be finished too. The ninth prince has never entered such brothels or brothels. Why is he here? Lu Mingshui couldn't figure it out because she couldn't have known that Yu Kong's sacred art the Meru God eyes could see the entire process of her kidnapping Bai Ye, as well as the escape route she took. No, this isn't the ninth prince. I must be seeing things. Lu Mingshui refused to believe it because she couldn't figure it out. Yes, that must be it. It's not the ninth prince at all. It must be some hedonistic son of a rich family. Yes, Suanji. At this thought, Lu Mingshui nervously heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she wanted to follow her plan and shout, "Someone come by Ching Ching." She wanted to call for someone to catch them in the act of adultery, but the moment she opened her mouth, there was no then. The busy Yu Kong was knocked unconscious with a single palm strike. This light bulb who had been forgotten but still wanted to seek death by himself. Yu Kong, who was almost stripped from the waist up, had his hands under her shirt. Chapter 151, Chapter 151, Chapter 151 Yu Kong, give it to me. Chapter 151, Chapter 151 Yu Kong, give it to me. And this time. However, it was completely different from the last time. At that time, Yu Kong was just messing around, but this time, he was stunned. His eyes were red as blood as he sucked on the lips of the person in his arms. His breathing was rapid and hot. It was obvious that he had been aroused. He really wanted it. He instinctively wanted more Yingluo. He held the petite girl in his arms tightly. He wanted to explore more. Especially the little one's charming and alluring soft voice, which tempted him to flirt with her. She had more reactions and sounds. Yee-er-hee-hee. Yu Kong hugged her and felt that this little thing was unbelievably soft. She was softer than any time he had held her in the past. She was especially sticky to him, as if she was going to stick into his bones. A strong desire had already overwhelmed Yu Kong's rationality. He wanted to tear Bai Ye's clothes apart and eat him up. He didn't care about anything else, and he couldn't care about Suanji. When Bai Ye's petite body, which was trembling slightly, appeared in front of him, Yu Kong suddenly stopped, the boiling blood in his body quickly cooling down. Bai Ye, who was completely aroused, twisted around in dissatisfaction and instinctively pressed himself against a certain lord's clean body. That fiery tender touch didn't make Yu Kong break down again. Yu Kong's breathing turned heavy, and he held the restless girl in his arms tightly. However, Bai Ye refused to give up. Coupled with her impressive skills, she wanted to break free and do something else. Soon, she couldn't move. She couldn't move at all. Woo, even though she was tormented by the poisonous heat in her body and was in urgent need of the imperial ninefold cassock, she did not move anymore. She just sobbed and wailed, like a poor abandoned kitten. Because Yu Kong was intentionally suppressing her freedom, she could no longer move. Yu Kong, who had regained his senses, forcefully suppressed Bai Ye's freedom for the first time, not allowing her to act recklessly. Because if she continued to flirt with him, he would definitely not be able to take it. He was afraid that he would really do something like an animal to punish him. But White Knight's meowing was undoubtedly a huge temptation to Yu Kong. It was a blow to Yu Kong, who was trying his best to suppress his desires. The most fatal thing was Imperial Ninefold. Bai Ye, who couldn't move but whose body was about to explode, suddenly called out the name of Yu Ninefold. This should have been her angry cry, but because of her current physical condition, this cry became a coquettish and flirtatious invitation. Yu Kong's eyes, which had finally darkened, turned red again. The beast blood that had cooled down suddenly began to burn again, and it seemed to be more vigorous than before. Because this time, what tempted him was not only her coquettish voice, but also the invitation that she could accurately call out his name even though she had clearly lost her mind. She knew it was him. This realization almost caused Yu Kong to break down. This was because he felt an inexplicable excitement of being completely satisfied. The impact of this strong satisfaction made him want to satisfy his desires. Chapter 152, Chapter 152, Chapter 152 Detoxify her. Chapter 152, Chapter 152 Detoxify her. No. Yu Kong's eyes were bloodshot as he held Bai Ye back, but he didn't do anything else. He was trying his best to restrain Yingluo because she was too young. Just now, when he took a look and thought about it, even if he was being controlled by the fire of desire, he still woke up with a whoosh. She was still too young and teasing him would hurt her perception. At that moment, it rushed into his mind. As an outstanding heir of the royal family, Yu Kong had been educated in certain areas. He had even been arranged to be a personal maid before, but he had always rejected it. It was only because he had never had any desire before that he was very unfamiliar with many feelings. But he was smart. Otherwise, he would not have achieved what he had today. Therefore, he could quickly understand what his current situation was and what was wrong with the person in his arms. I can't be a coward. Yu Kong knew that he really wanted it. This was the first time in his life that he had such a lust in his heart. However, he really felt like he was a coward. Because this little one was really still little Yingluo. Especially when compared to him, it was even smaller. Little knight? Yu Kong grabbed the clothes that Bai Ye had ripped off and wrapped them back up for her. Not to mention that even under normal circumstances, he was a mature man, and his violation to a young girl would hurt her delicate body. Moreover, his body was even more unusual than an ordinary man's due to some special reasons. If he really did something disgraceful, he felt that the little person in his arms would really be torn apart by him. At that time, Yingluo. She might die. This realization made Yu Kong's anger disappear instantly. Instead, it was replaced by an unfamiliar sense of emptiness. No. Yu Kong knew that he didn't want anything to happen to the girl in his arms, and he didn't want her to die. He couldn't, and he definitely wouldn't do it anymore. Yu Kong's rationality had returned to him, and he disappeared with Bai Ye in his arms almost instantly. Not long after. In the Han family, a famous alchemist family in the imperial city. Find her the antidote. Yu Kong, who had barged into the courtyard, stared at a thin man in white who was pouring herbs in the courtyard. The white-robed man didn't show any signs of panic even though someone had barged in all of a sudden. Instead, he looked up at Yu Kong and stared at Bai Ye in his arms excitedly. This is little junior sister? A little girl whose talent index exceeds junior brother Qin? The Bai Ching Ching who seduced you head over heels, by what was it again, Ching Ching? Little junior sister Bai Ye? What the hell is this? Little junior sister has been poisoned. The man in white, who had suddenly switched to talking to himself, had already reached out to take Bai Ye's pulse as he spoke. His expression, however, instantly changed from calm and relaxed to solemn and serious. The change in his expression made Yu Kong's heart skip a beat. This was because Yu Kong knew very well that although this guy looked young, he was actually an abnormal alchemist. He was a monster who had entered the Heaven's Will mansion before him and Qin Ban. That was why he had come to find this guy in such an emergency situation instead of going to the heavenly hospital. But what's with this guy's expression? At this moment, the man in white had already stopped. How is it? Yu Kong immediately asked. Go into the house and perform emergency treatment. The white-robed man's voice was slightly anxious as he replied, she's so late. The medicinal effect has already spread completely. She's going to explode. Chapter 153, Chapter 153, Chapter 153 A National Beauty. Chapter 153, Chapter 153 A National Beauty. Yu Kong's face turned green, red, and green at the same time. He carried Bai Ye into the house without a second word. However, Bai Ye was clearly unconscious at this moment, and his face was in a daze. It's so red. The man in white who followed them in was shocked when he saw Bai Ye's expression, especially. White Knight's body was actually starting to smoke. What's going on? Yu Kong's face turned pale at the sight, and his hands unconsciously clenched tightly around Bai Ye's tiny hands. It's a sign of body explosion. Let me take a look. As the man in white spoke, he had already opened his first aid kit and was ready to treat Bai Ye with acupuncture. However, just as he was about to move, his movement suddenly stopped in the air, and he froze. Yu Kong frowned when he saw this. Your body is her nemesis. You can't stay here. Get out, said one of the guys. I won't. You do it, I'll hold it down. Of course, Yu Kong wasn't willing to leave, but he also understood what Han Yu meant, so he immediately released his restraint on Bai Ye. It's done. Yu Zhekong said, one hand still holding onto Bai Ye's hand, obviously not willing to go out. However, White Knight, who had been freed from his suppression, was now tightly stuck to the Imperial Ninefold. Yu Zhekong, swan swan. Fortunately, Han Yu had already made his move. However, as his silver needles fell, Bai Ye, who was completely unconscious, would let out a whimpering wail, causing Yu Zhekong to stare at Han Yu's hand the entire time. There were a few times when Han Yu accidentally touched Bai Ye's skin a little too much, and Yu Zhekong's face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. The temperature in the room dropped to freezing point. Wait for this torturous process to pass, Yingluo. Seeing Bai Ye's blushing face slowly fading away from the blood tide, Yu Zhekong's aura eased up quite a bit. However, Han Yu's expression became more and more grave as Bai Ye recovered. The entire treatment process took a day, from midnight to the next night, before Han Yu finally stopped. By now, his face was so pale that even the veins under his skin could be seen. Even his body had lost a lot of weight, which made him look even slimmer. Why isn't he awake? Yu Zhekong was getting anxious. She won't wake up for at least 3 to 5 days. Han Yu, who had been ignored, could only swallow a recovery pill before replying weakly, and after Yingluo wakes up, there might be something wrong with her. What do you mean? Yu Zhekong's eyes, which were originally fixed on Bai Ye, immediately shifted to Han Yu. Han Yu adjusted his breathing and asked with a serious expression, do you know what poison she's been poisoned with, see? Yu Zhekong furrowed his brows. Could it be that it's not an aphrodisiac? Yes and no. Han Yu replied, nodding and shaking his head. Yu Zhekong was annoyed. Speak human language. Tell me the speed. There is indeed an aphrodisiac, but there is also the national beauty and heavenly fragrance poison. Although this poison also has the effect of aphrodisiac, it has a very insidious effect. That is, no matter what method is used to detoxify it, after the poison dissipates, the poisoned person will become a disabled person. Han Yu slowly explained. Hearing this, Yu Zhekong's dark eyes darkened, and a dark red glint appeared in his eyes. It was like a blooming red spider lily, spreading across the entire hell. Chapter 154, Chapter 154, Chapter 154 Who's so ruthless? Chapter 154, Chapter 154 Who's so ruthless? In the western suburbs of the Imperial City. Boss Zhu, I said that someone would come for this woman. Why can't we wait for her? If we keep waiting, this woman will die. As Zhu Yi said this, he stared at the unconscious Lu Mingshui. Yo. You're trying to be tender to a woman. Zhu Feng, who had been summoned back by Yu Zhekong, was also staring at Lu Mingshui. And in this famous brothel area, almost all of Yu Zhechong's hidden guards were following them closely. The people who came and went here were being checked one by one. However, this kind of inspection was carried out in secret, so every guest who was being investigated did not know that they were being watched. Except for Qingxian Heaven. Young master, even if you don't go to the appointment with Principal Chen tonight, you should at least send a letter, right? Otherwise, young lady would be in a difficult position. You can find out all the spies of the Ninth Prince. Qing Xiantian asked in a low voice. Gege, Qing Sua Nation's trusted subordinate fell silent upon hearing this. Because in the Imperial City, even the Crown Prince's party couldn't do this, let alone the forces from other places. But, young master, it's been a long time, but this place is calm and peaceful. Everything should be fine, right? Sometimes, the attendant couldn't help but feel that his young master was too cautious in his actions. After all, it had been a day since the incident. People from the Ninth Prince's residence had come and gone, but there was no problem. Lu Mingshui is still here. That means there's a problem. Qing Xiantian said with certainty. He firmly believed that there was a trap outside, which was why he refused to leave the secret room hidden in the brothel. Yingluo. He didn't know what to say. However, just as the steward was about to leave helplessly, Qing Xiantian stood up and the big chair he was sitting on instantly turned into ashes with a bang. K. The attendant was shocked and looked up at Qing Xiantian. He was so shocked by the latter's ferocious face that he did not recover from the shock and stood in a daze on the spot. It's him every time. Qing Xiantian clenched his fist and muttered. No one knew how much he wanted to snatch Yu Zhekong away when he was about to go save the damsel in distress. He really wanted to go forward, even if he would be beaten to death by Yu Zhechong. In the end, his rationality won over him and he retreated. He still watched his fiancée slip away. Damn it! The thought of Bai Ye, who had been poisoned by the aphrodisiac, still having sex with Yu Zhekong made Qing Xiantian go crazy with jealousy. She was his woman, but now he had to use schemes to get her back. She was his woman, but now he could only think about how she would do it with someone else. I shouldn't have thought that. I didn't touch her at that time. If she had belonged to me long ago, I wouldn't be like this now. Qing Xiantian was filled with regret. He regretted not taking advantage of the time when Bai Ye was in love with him to take her. The attendant, who had been frightened for quite a while, finally understood what Qing Xiantian meant. He quickly consoled him, "Young master, don't worry. Miss Bai looks young after all. The ninth prince probably doesn't have such a fetish. He's probably taking her to get rid of the poison." "No," she said. Qing Xiantian shook his head with certainty. The poison of beauty and heavenly fragrance can cause the poisoned person to release an aphrodisiac aura to those who are close to her. However, without a specially made antidote, it can make the poisoned person lose their cultivation together with the person who cured her. Qing Xiantian revealed a strange and sinister smile as he said this. The attendant was speechless. Chapter 155, Chapter 155, Chapter 155 A Cripple. Chapter 155, Chapter 155 A Cripple. He couldn't help but secretly size up Qing Xian Heaven, which was in the secret chamber and shrouded in darkness. He was wondering if his young master had been planning to destroy the ninth prince, Yu Zhekong, from the moment Miss Lu Mingshui had decided to attack Miss Bai. In fact, he didn't even hesitate to watch as Miss Bai, who had been decided to be his wife, was taken away by the ninth prince. The steward felt a chill run down his back when he thought of this. He had always known that his young master was a very deep and unfathomable person. But in the past, he felt that it was still all right. After all, those schemes were still within the normal range. But ever since the incident with Miss Bai went out of control, young master's thoughts became even deeper. Just wait and see. We'll leave in 3 days when Lu Mingshui is no longer around. Qing Xiantian suddenly regained his calmness as he spoke. His tightly clenched hand slowly unfurled. When he thought about how the adulterer couple might have lost their cultivation together, what reason did he have to be unhappy? Yes. The steward silently retreated. 3 days later. Han family, in Han Shu's courtyard. 3 days and he's still not awake. Han Yu, what are you doing? Yu Zhekong's voice was obviously not polite, and it even carried a murderous intent. It was no wonder. After all, he had been staring at Bai Ye for 4 days and 4 nights. Han Yu had told him every time that he would wake up the next morning, and that he would wake up the next morning. Tomorrow morning and tomorrow morning, he had been deceived 3 or 4 times. However, it didn't really matter if he was deceived. Yu Zhekong was more worried about Shiroya's physical condition. Whoa, that shouldn't be. It's been 3 days, it's time to wake up. Han Yu was also a little confused. This time, he was also very careful and gave Bai Ye a comprehensive examination. What's going on? Are you sure you can do it? Yu Zhekong was starting to doubt Han Yu's skill at saving people. However, after Han Yu carefully examined Bai Ye's body, he did not make a sound for a long time. Yu Zhekong stared into Han Yu's eyes, which gradually turned deep and dark. The hand he was holding Bai Ye's hand with was already subconsciously rubbing the skin on the back of his hand. He looked very calm, but the veins on the back of his hands were faintly moving. A dark golden light was faintly coming out of them. As if sensing Yu Zhekong's restlessness, Han Yu immediately looked up and said, I might really not be able to do it. She's crippled. Yu Zhekong stopped rubbing and asked with a deep gaze. It's hard to say, Han Yu shook his head in uncertainty. What do you mean? Didn't you say that our blood is mutually exclusive and that if I use my blood to detoxify her, that whatever poison of national beauty and heavenly fragrance would not affect her body at all? Yu Zhekong was really starting to doubt Han Yu's medical skills. The problem is that she's rejecting your blood. She actually fused the blood I gave her into her bloodline. Your blood has already been rejected. What can I do if she doesn't want to absorb it? Han Yu expressed helplessly. He was also depressed. He had never encountered such a situation before. Someone could actually analyze and separate something that had already fused into their bloodline. What kind of situation was this? Reject me? Yu Zhekong raised an eyebrow, unconsciously not believing Han Yu's words. Are you kidding me? Does she look like she'll reject me? It's so tightly attached and still rejects Yingluo. At this moment, Bai Ye, who had been unconscious for a few days, made a sound for the first time after the detoxification. Chapter 156, Chapter 156, Chapter 156 Awakening. Chapter 156, Chapter 156 Awakening. Yu Zhekong, for a moment, he thought he was hallucinating, so he focused his attention and looked into Han Yu's eyes, as if he wanted to get some confirmation from the other's eyes. At this moment, White Knight once again made a moaning sound, and it seemed to be very comfortable. White Knight, who was in deep sleep, emitted rays of light green light with a hum. The light was like silk that came out of a silkworm cocoon, instantly wrapping White Knight in layers. After a while, only Bai Ye's pretty face was left outside. "This is Yingluo." Han Yu was a little surprised as he looked at the scene in front of him. White Knight, who seemed to be in a deep sleep, had actually regained his consciousness. However, the moment she changed her attribute, she realized that the Bai Clan Heart Sutra in her body was circulating automatically. It seemed to be trying to gather all the power in her body to digest something. Bai Ye, who was a little dazed, followed the circulation of her heart meridian and carefully sensed it. She could vaguely see a small ball of bright red energy condensed in her danshan. The aura of a 9th stage master. Bai Ye could clearly sense the aura of Yu Jukan from this ball of energy, which made her feel very strange. However, some of her memories before she lost consciousness also came back to her at this moment. Shiroya probably remembered that when she was under the control of the super-strong aphrodisiac in her body, Yu Jukong appeared and hugged her. His embrace and aura were like the raging waves of the vast sea, destroying her consciousness in an instant. She seemed to have flirted with him, and she had gone quite far. Bai Ye, he for a moment, she thought that she had devoured his highness, who was as beautiful as a flower and jade, and now only this ball of vital energy and blood was left, he. If that was the case, then it would be as she wished. After all, she really was. She often wanted to kill this stupid prince who had a brain problem and liked to control everything. However, she soon realized that this idea was unrealistic. This was because she knew that her cultivation was definitely not at the level where she could eat a certain someone. On the contrary, it would be easier for the other party to eat her. My body doesn't feel uncomfortable in any way. In other words, my poison wasn't cured by the Pa method, but by the Pixie method. After White Knight tidied up his body, he discovered many problems. There's the smell of resuscitation grass and an unknown pill in my blood. Someone saved me, but the poison is obviously not completely cleared. White Knight quickly analyzed the situation in his body. Because of this, she realized that the profound chi that lingered in her meridians, internal organs, and bone marrow were being stuck by strands of dark energy. Not only that they're devouring my profound chi and corroding my meridians. Bai Ye did not expect that there was a poison that could exist and destroy the poisoned person's body in such a form. And if it wasn't for the fact that she had cultivated the Bai Clan Heart Sutra, the power of the Heart Sutra was automatically and tenaciously resisting the destructive power. In addition, there was someone helping her to treat the poison, she would have been finished long ago. Lu Mingshui's aphrodisiac actually had such a sinister poison mixed in. Bai Ye's breathing became heavier at the thought of this. She could imagine that if Yu Jukong didn't show up, not only would she not be able to keep her innocence, she might not even be able to keep her cultivation. Chapter 157, Chapter 157, His Highness is so angry. Chapter 157, His Highness is so angry. This is the tempo of my reputation being ruined and my cultivation base destroyed. White Knight analyzed the motive of the poisoner, but he discovered another problem. According to Lu Mingshui's words at that time, she obviously didn't know that there was another poison in the aphrodisiac poison. Otherwise, she wouldn't have made the unnecessary move to trap me with the spirit-suppressing bag. The soul-suppressing pouch's function is basically the same as the sinister poison. When Bai Ye thought of this, he roughly understood who was the person behind this whole incident. Because there was only one person who could do such a thing and arrange it so insidiously and carefully. Qingxian Heaven. Bai Ye muttered this name and thought to himself, as expected, he still hasn't given up and can't wait to make a move. Then this time, it's time to completely end it. Bai Ye, who had originally planned to deal with Qingxian Heaven after participating in the genius selection, had already decided how to completely trample Qingxian Heaven and even the Qing family to death. Since you want me to become a cripple so much, I'll do as you wish. He. Bai Ye wanted to see what kind of conspiracy they were plotting, but the premise was that she couldn't really be crippled. After sorting everything out, Bai Ye immediately focused her mind and prepared to expel the poison that adhered to her meridians. But she quickly realized that Yingluo was a little too weak. Bai Ye was surprised to see that when the Heart Sutra digested a trace of the small bright red ball of light's power, the mystic chi that contained the Imperial Nine Tribulations aura and belonged to her could easily annihilate the poison when it washed into her meridians. During the process of digestion, Bai Ye could already sense that this small ball of red energy was actually the blood of a 9th-tier master of the Imperial stage, which meant that the blood of a 9th stage master can cure this poison. Bai Ye had just deduced this result, but before she could verify it in detail, she felt a pain on her face, as if someone had pinched her hard. This pulled her consciousness, which was originally immersed in her inner vision, back to reality in an instant. However, just as she was about to open her eyes, she felt another pinch on her face, and it was not an ordinary force. Hiss. Bai Ye sucked in a breath of air in pain. A pair of clear and bright eyes also opened in an instant. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw a familiar, devilishly handsome face that was extremely close to her. His long eyebrows were like a painting, and his eyes were as red as flowing fire. In an instant, she was burning up. That's right, it was burning her. At this moment, she felt as if she was about to be burned to death, and was about to be completely swallowed by the fire in the eyes of the person in front of her. This look in his eyes. When was instantly activated. The level less dark flame in White Knight's body made her body subconsciously burst into flames to resist the situation of being burned to death. However, at this moment, the blood-red flames gradually extinguished. Oh. Baya blinked again and saw that the man's eyes had gradually lost the stunning and destructive fiery red luster, leaving only traces of a dense red glow that seemed to be non-existent at the bottom of his eyes, making her heart beat seductively. You're awake. Yu Zhekong's low and hoarse voice sounded as if he was trying to hold back something sexy and alluring. His voice suddenly awakened some images in Baya's memory, making her ears warm instantly. She subconsciously moved back, but just as she moved, she was wrapped in a certain prince's arm. Then, she felt a pain on her lips. Chapter 158, Chapter 158, Chapter 158 Bite ruthlessly. Chapter 158, Chapter 158 Bite ruthlessly. Her lips were blocked by a certain man's bite. Shua shua. A slightly familiar yet extremely strange numbing feeling, accompanied by a sudden prickling sensation, suddenly burrowed into White Knight's senses, causing her to be stunned for a moment. All the things that happened between her and Yu Zhekong, things like did it before, and it seemed like she was the one who initiated it, all of these images were just popping into her head, and she couldn't react in time. Yu Zhekong had only wanted to punish her by biting her once, but when he let go of her lips, he was reminded of her cute look when she was seducing him. Little thing. Yu Zhekong couldn't take it anymore, and he sucked on the tender lips that he had just let go of. He even seized the opportunity to pinch her jawbone in a familiar manner, forcing her to open her mouth. And so, he said. The first thing Baya did after he woke up was to let Yu Zhekong take over his lips and teeth. She didn't know that when she was deep in thought, the words Qingxian heaven that she had subconsciously muttered were said by her, and it was also heard by Yu Zhechong. As for who Qingxian Tian was, Yu Zhekong knew it all too well. However, before Baya was poisoned, Yu Zhekong had never taken Qingxian heaven seriously. Intact, he had almost forgotten that the name Ot Baya's ex-fiancée was Bayan. When the unconscious Baya suddenly called out this name, Yu Zhekong wanted to strangle her to wake her up and bite her as punishment. He didn't want her to call out someone else's name while she was unconscious. This was especially so for Baya, who had just woken up. He subconsciously moved back to avoid her, and this action was awkward. You ungrateful little thing. Yu Zhekong sucked on her lips with all his might, but when he felt the sweetness in her mouth, he couldn't stop himself from going deeper and deeper into her, as if he wanted to eat her up in one bite. Han Yu, who didn't have time to leave, chuckled. He didn't know what to say either. Speaking of which, if young people wanted to be intimate these days, couldn't they restrain themselves a little and wait for their senior brothers and seniors like him to leave first? However, Han Yu quickly realized that Yu Zhechong had received his retribution. The intoxicated Yu Zhekong was caught off guard, and Baya, who had finally reacted, bit him without holding back. However, Yu Zhekong was obviously not willing to give up just like that. He was still holding onto the back of Baya's head, and under the stimulation of the smell of blood, he couldn't help but want to devour more of the sweet and soft love he wanted. Baya bit him again. His palms, which were originally on his chest, moved directly to the back of his waist and pressed certain acupuncture point heavily. But not only that, she was obviously going to do something else, and she was about to go all out. Yu Zhekong let go of her lips and teeth before she could go all out, but he still didn't let go of his hands around her waist. Baya took a deep breath and saw Yu Zhekong raise his hand, using his long index finger to wipe the blood off his lips. And this blood was naturally from her bite. What a ruthless bite. Yu Zhekong collected the blood on his fingertips and spoke as if he was using physical evidence to criticize Baya. Is this how I repay you for saving you? Baya really wanted to roll his eyes. What the hell was this? He was the one who had taken advantage of her when she had just woken up and was not paying attention. Her counterattack was a legitimate counterattack. The result. Chapter 159, Chapter 159, Suck his blood. Chapter 159, Suck his blood. Why did it seem like she was returning kindness with ingratitude? What, you're not convinced? Yu Zhekong looked at Baya's expression and knew that she was about to roll her eyes. He reached out to grab her chin, wanting to have a good talk with her. But the moment he stretched out his hand. Swish. However, Baya opened his mouth and bit his finger. Yu Zhekong didn't even have the time to react before he gasped in shock. Baya had already used her sharp teeth to bite through his finger, and even sucked his blood. and the speed of its blood-sucking was extremely fast. Whoosh! Yu Zhekong's eyes narrowed. He could clearly sense that there was some sort of power in Bai Ye's body that was helping her to suck a lot of his blood and qi through his index finger. In addition, as his qi and blood flowed into her body, which was originally emitting a faint dark and even decaying aura, seemed to be weakened because of this. Bai Ye was actually a little stunned at this moment. Although she was the one who bit him, she did it out of some kind of impulse to be tempted. When Yu Zhekong reached his hand out to get closer to her, she could smell the blood on his fingertips, and she couldn't help but be startled. It was the Heart Sutra. It seemed that Yu Zhekong's qi and blood was very effective in treating her poison, so when he tempted her, although she didn't have any reaction, the Bai's Heart Sutra in her body obviously couldn't resist the temptation. Bai Ye was speechless and wanted to hold his forehead when he thought about the key point of the problem. However, she had no other choice. She could only suppress her excitement and try to let go of Yu Zhekong's finger. A stream of blood flowed down Yu Zhekong's index finger and into her mouth. She looked up at him in shock. "Drink up," Yu Zhekong said softly as he sent more blood to Bai Ye through his index finger. He could already roughly sense that his blood was not useless to Bai Ye, nor was it rejected by her. Instead, she should have her own way of digesting his blood. So that quack, Han Yu, was indeed a quack. He was completely wrong. He knew it. He was his own person. How could he reject his blood? "Drink it." As Yu Zhekong fed Bai Ye his blood, he seemed to be taunting and showing off at the same time as he glanced at Han Yu, who was still in shock from Bai Ye's blood-sucking. "Bai Ye, he. For a moment, she wanted to retract her mouth and not drink it, but the Heart Sutra, this disobedient technique, was not willing to let go at all. Her own rationality also told her that she should not let go. After all, this blood was really useful to her. So just suck. This posture and action always made Bai Ye feel very strange. However, Yu Zhekong's next words made her give up on struggling. "I'll keep the person who poisoned you." Yu Zhekong didn't manage the rest of the matters these few days, other than the fact that he didn't have the time or the heart to manage it. The main reason was that he wanted to let Bai Ye handle it himself. He knew that she would prefer to take revenge on her own. He knew that with her small personality, she would never allow this matter to end like this. If he did not let her vent her anger on her own, she would definitely be very aggrieved. Whoosh! 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 Just as Yu Zhekong had expected, Bai Ye accepted his blood without hesitation after he finished his sentence. With the fresh energy and blood of Imperial Stage 9 entering her body, coupled with Bai Ye's conscious digestion and guidance, the remaining poison in her body was quickly cleared. However, while Bai Ye was treating the poison, Qing Xiantian had already used his own method to enter the palace and met with Yu Qianyi. Chapter 160, Chapter 160, There's a change in the marriage. Chapter 160, There's a change in the marriage. In Yu Qianyi's hands was a marriage contract from Qing Xiantian that proved that he was engaged to Bai Ye. At the same time, Qing Xiantian, who was kneeling in the middle of the hall, was still speaking sincerely and continuing to express his profound and righteous words. Although this lowly one and Ye Yingluo and Miss Bai are childhood sweethearts, but now Miss Bai's misunderstanding of this lowly subject is too deep, it is impossible for them to become husband and wife. In addition, Miss Bai has extraordinary talent. I'm afraid that this marriage contract will be used by someone with ill intentions, so I asked Chief Cheng to lead me to report this matter to His Majesty. Qing Xiantian even bowed down to Yu Qianyi in a humble manner. Seeing this, Chen Bizu turned to Yu Qianyi and said, "Xiantian has been trying his best to report this matter to me in fear and trepidation 2 days ago. This matter concerns His Royal Highness, and it's a serious matter. I dare not neglect it." Hearing this, Yu Qianyi nodded his head slightly but did not immediately express his opinion. Qing Xiantian had been waiting for a long time, but Yu Qianyi did not give any verbal order to exempt them from the formalities. However, Yu Qianyi was able to remain calm and knelt on the ground as if he was not anxious at all. "Is this the wood element genius you told me about before?" Yu Qianyi's topic did not stop at the marriage contract between Bai Ye and Qing Xiantian. Instead, he talked about the talent of Qing Xiantian. "That's right. This child's wood element talent index has reached 9 stars. I intend to recommend him to the Ministry of Heavenly Troops. This child will be a very good talent for leadership." Chen Bizu recommended Qing Xiantian, his words full of praise for the latter. 9 star. Yu Qianyi was obviously surprised when he heard the talent index of Qing Xiantian. He glanced at the young man who was kneeling in front of the hall. "That's right. It's just that this child has too many things on his mind. He always wants to help his father, who is an official in a local government. He also has all kinds of concerns, so his cultivation has not improved. That's why I feel that the Heavenly Division is a good place to go." Chen Bizu explained. Yu Qianyi nodded. "No wonder his cultivation level is so low. It's a good idea to go to the Ministry of Heavenly Troops. It's a good place to train and toughen one's heart. I will obey your Majesty's teachings. Qing Xiantian immediately complied. Cheng Bizhu saw that he had said everything he needed to say and saw that Yu Qinyi had no desire to continue the conversation, so he tactfully left with Qing Xiantian. Qing Xian Heaven, what a good name. Yu Qinyi said with a deeper meaning as the two men left. Qing Suanation's movement stiffened before he bowed and wanted to explain, my father is Ge. All right, you may leave. Yu Qinyi interrupted. Qing Xiantian subconsciously looked at Cheng Bizhu. Seeing the latter nod, he left again. After the two of them left, Yu Qinyi rubbed his brows and called out, that's enough, Elder Jun. You've heard everything. Come out. Ahem, 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 ahem. Jun Wuming, who had been caught eavesdropping, coughed lightly and walked into the hall from the back. This old official's hearing is too good, and he was talking about a child of our heavens will manor, so I heard it immediately. Yu Qinyi asked, so, the soundproof formation in the palace is just for show? At this time, Jun Wuming's tone changed, and he asked directly, Your Majesty, do you have no intention of betrothing Bai Ye to Ju Chong? If you don't have the heart, I would have brought the child back to the Heavens Will Mansion earlier. Oh. Yu Qinqin's eyes flashed as she stared at Jun Wuming and said slowly. You value her talent so much. Aren't you worried about the damage that the national beauty and Nivan fragrance will cause to Na? Chapter 161, Chapter 161, Personal Disciple. Chapter 161, Personal Disciple. Even though Yu Zhekong didn't bring Bai Ye back to the palace, and didn't invite anyone from the heavenly hospital to treat him, it was impossible that Yu Qinyi didn't know that he and Bai Ye had been staying at the Han residence for the past few days. As long as Yu Qinyi had the intention to investigate, everything that happened in the Han residence could not be hidden from his eyes. Furthermore, Yu Zhekong and Han Ling had no intention of hiding anything from Yu Qinyi, so it was normal for Yu Qinyi to know about Bai Ye's condition. It would be a lie to say that I'm not worried, so I'm in a hurry to bring the child back. Jun Wuming replied, shaking his head. Yu Qinyi furrowed his brows and clenched his fists subconsciously. He has an outstanding talent in the 9th tier, but his ambition is not in the court. He will leave the dynasty sooner or later. I can't stop him, and I won't stop him. But His Majesty wants to hold a grandson whose talent is no less than a 9th rank? Are you really planning to depose the crown prince? Jun Wuming understood what Yu Qinyi meant. With his status, there was no need for him to use too much of an official's tone with Yu Qinyi. That was why he dared to ask questions that even powerful officials would not dare to ask. It was a sensitive topic. Yu Qinyi's face darkened at the mention of the crown prince. Do you think I'll hand over the country to that idiot? When he thought of the disgraceful things that the crown prince had done, he really wanted to kill his stupid son. Didn't Lu Ming say that he was the mastermind behind all this? Didn't the crown prince know nothing about it and was only led there by him? Jun Wuming said. You believe that? I don't believe you. Jun Wuming nodded seriously. Yu Qinyi, he. The other princes are also mediocre. If Ninefold can marry a girl from the 5th family, even if the child is not as good as him, it will not be worse than the other princes. In addition, if he doesn't like it, he won't take it away, so this imperial grandson is naturally mine. Yu Qinyi said after some consideration. This old subject feels that your Majesty is overthinking. If Ninefold didn't like it, would it have given birth to a child for you? Jun Wuming's words exposed the heavenly secret. Yu Qinyi said, all right, over the years, his son had indeed lived up to the saying. But the 9th level still values friendship. Your Majesty, why don't you follow his wishes? Perhaps you'll get unexpected gains. Jun Wuming knew that as the emperor of a country, Yu Qinyi would have a lot of means to weigh the pros and cons and that he was not a pure, loving father, but he still gave him a reminder. What do you think if I grant him a marriage and let him marry both girls? Yu Qinyi said. Jun Wuming had a bad feeling about this. Elder Jun, can you make peace and let Zhekong accept this imperial edict? I can't do anything about it. Yu Qinyi played the weak card and made his request to Jun Wuming. I refuse. Jun Wuming immediately stood up and refused without another word. Elder Jun, Zhen. Perhaps you can consider this marriage for another 2 years. Otherwise, how would I face my students in the future? Jun Wuming didn't want to do such a thankless task. Moreover, he had a feeling that Bai Ye's talent wouldn't be wasted just like that. A student. Yu Qinyi understood the hidden meaning in Jun Wuming's words. That's right, this old minister has the intention to take the child as a personal disciple. Jun Wuming didn't beat around the bush and directly stated his intentions. This was something he had decided upon after seeing White Knight's talent. However, he was the head of the Heavens Will Mansion, so his identity was a bit special. If he wanted to take a disciple, He had to go back to the Heaven's Will Mansion and hold the ceremony in front of all the elders. Your heart is still the same? Yu Qinyi asked in a serious tone. Yes. Jun Wuming replied without hesitation. Hearing this, Yu Qinyi pondered for a moment before calling out, "Guards, set the Han residence up." Chapter 162, Chapter 162, Chapter 162 Fengkai Huang. Chapter 162, Chapter 162 Fengkai Huang. Han Mansion. Bai Ye, who had already sucked quite a bit of Yu Zhekong's blood, let go of the finger in her mouth. However, a certain master didn't pull his finger back, but instead raised his other hand and clasped her chin. Bai Ye frowned slightly. She did not like the action of her jaw being pinched, because it felt like everything was under someone else's control, so she could only let him do whatever he wanted. Yu Zhekong's long and slender thumb rested on her brows, fondling them as he said, "You're full." Bai Ye stuck out his tongue, wanting to spit out the finger that was still in her mouth. After all, it was easier to talk this way. But just as she moved her tongue, Yu Zhekong's long fingers slid nimbly and hooked deep into the base of her tongue. Pa! Bai Ye slapped away the hand that was fiddling with her tongue at an extremely fast speed. Yu Zhekong raised an eyebrow, but Bai Ye beat him to it. "I'm going to treat the poison." "Yes." Yu Zhekong acknowledged. "Hello, you've let go of me." Bai Ye was rendered speechless by a certain prince's actions of using both his hands and feet, pinching her face with his hands and pressing his long legs on her legs. Especially this leg, didn't he know that his own leg was very heavy? Now, it was affecting her detoxification. Yu Zhekong followed Bai Ye's line of sight and knew that she was obviously unhappy with his leg being on top of hers. However, she didn't say anything and returned to her patience and coldness towards him before she was poisoned. She wanted to pretend that nothing had happened. Yu Zhekong's dark eyes narrowed as he realized this. Bai Ye looked up at him and said, "Thank you for this." Aphrodisiac poison that had made her completely lose consciousness, the soul-suppressing bag, and the 9-palace maze. So if this man didn't make a move this time, even if she didn't die, she probably wouldn't be able to survive. And even if she could escape in the end, the poison in her body that even the power of the Bai Clan Heart Sutra could not deal with was not something she could get rid of quickly. If that happened, she would probably be in a miserable state for a while. He. Yu Zhekong was stunned for a moment before his eyes lit up. He curled his sexy lips into a smile and said, "I don't want any other gifts but you. Kiss this king again." White Knight's pupils contracted slightly. Yu Zhekong had already bent down and clasped her jaw. His scorching breath was closing in on her, and she subconsciously turned her head away. "Can I change to something else?" Although her soul was not that of a little girl, to Bai Ye, this kind of thing still made her feel very strange and awkward. Yu Zhekong didn't respond, and he didn't chase after her to force a kiss on her either. Instead, he pressed his forehead against hers and caressed her smooth neck. His actions were extremely intimate. Bai Ye could vaguely sense that Yu Zhekong's touch was different from the way he had pinched her before. "Little thing, this king is liking you more and more." Yu Zhekong's voice was soft, but his tone was heavy. Because they were very close, and Bai Ye had turned his head to the side, his breath was almost all on her sensitive ear, making her shrink back a little. "Has this king treated you well?" Yu Zhekong asked as he caressed her earlobe. Bai Ye's sensitive body trembled, and he already nodded without thinking. "Okay." At the same time, she subconsciously reached out to hold his chest, but she did not push him away like before. Yu Zhekong's dark eyes brightened, and the layers of red in his eyes bloomed along with Bai Ye's slightly reddened ears. Step by step, they bloomed to their most brilliant, like a peach in full bloom. Chapter 163, Chapter 163, The Storm of Bestowing Marriage, 1. Chapter 163, The Storm of Bestowing Marriage, 1. "Good girl." Pleased, Yu Zhekong pecked Bai Ye's round ear. Bai Ye flinched, but before he could protest, Yu Zhekong had already let go of her jaw and retracted his leg. "Hurry up and get rid of the poison. Even though my blood has a miraculous effect, you still look like you need to put in more effort." Bai Ye, who had finally been completely released from his restraints, heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, he was speechless to see that a certain lord was already lazily lying on his side on the bed where she was, with one hand on her thigh, teasing her. "I'll take a break, you go do your thing." With that, Yu Zhekong lay down beside Bai Ye and closed his eyes to rest. However, his hand was still as steady as a mountain, pressing down on her leg. Almost instinctively, Bai Ye raised his hand to slap away this lecherous hand. However, when she saw Yu Zhekong's pale face, she put her hand down. With her medical skills, she could tell that Yu Zhezhong was a little weak. The reason he was like this was because he had given her a lot of blood. "Forget it," he said. Bai Ye sighed in his heart and chose to ignore Yu Zhezhong's palm. He calmed down and went into seclusion to treat the poison. However, just as she closed her eyes, Yuja Kong, who had already closed his eyes, opened them slightly. He was even very focused on Baiye, who had already gone into seclusion to treat his poison. This little thing. Yuja Kong mumbled softly. He lay there, staring at Baiye, who was slowly entering the state of poison curing. After a long while, he retracted his hand from Baiye's thigh, but his gaze became extremely deep and unfathomable, with a faint trace of confusion. Why was he confused? This was because just now, when he used his own method to test Baiye, when Baiye told him that her body's instinctive reaction was that she did not reject him, he could clearly feel his heart beating faster. Moreover, it was a very fast one. This was an unprecedented situation. Looking back at everything that had happened before, Yuja Kong realized that his emotions and even his will were being influenced by Baiye more and more. The change happened so quickly that Yuja Kong couldn't even react in time. You little troublemaker. Yuja Kong himself had no idea how he changed so quickly, but he was certain that he was no longer just curious about Baiye like he was when he first saw her. He was already very concerned about this girl. Even the junior brother Yu. Han Yu's soft knock on the door interrupted Yuja Kong's train of thought. He could only temporarily calm down and walk out of the room. Han Yu watched as Yuja Kong carefully closed the door behind him and asked curiously, "It looks like you like little junior sister a lot. How could you hold back?" Other than Qing Xiantian, who had used Lu Yushui's hands to poison her, who knew about the uniqueness of a national beauty, Han Yu, who was well versed in medicinal knowledge, also knew about it. However, he was a little confused. Since this junior brother of his liked this newly promoted junior sister so much, how could he resist the temptation? Well, although his little junior sister looked a little young, she was delicate and beautiful. In that kind of situation, generally speaking, as long as it was a man, he wouldn't be able to resist it. Are you really impotent? Han Yu suddenly thought of this question. Yuja Kong's face darkened. Don't panic. I have a way to help you. I'll give you 2 needles later, do you want that? Han Yu looked at Yuja Kong's expression and immediately felt that he had guessed correctly, so he was very enthusiastic about helping Yuja Kong. Yuja Kong didn't want to continue the topic. Is my father here? Chapter 164, Chapter 164, The Storm of Bestowing Marriage, 2. Chapter 164, The Storm of Bestowing Marriage, 2. Hearing this question, Han Yu's attention was immediately diverted. He nodded and replied, "That's right. Old man Jun is here too. He even asked me to pass you a message." What did he say? Yuja Kong's brows were raised as he asked with some doubt. After all, they were about to meet. If there was anything to say, they could just say it face to face later. Why did they need Han Zheng to pass the message? Unless it was not convenient for her to say it in front of Yu Qinyi. The old man said that your imperial father has the intention to let you marry 2 wives. Han Yu conveyed Jun Wuming's exact words. Hearing this, Yuja Kong subconsciously glanced at the door and set up a soundproof formation. He then frowned at Han Yu and asked, "I don't think you're that loud usually. Can't you be more careful?" Han Yu, Yingluo, is this the key to the problem? If this is true, so what if little junior sister heard about it earlier? If it didn't work, then it didn't matter. Shouldn't you be more concerned about who your other wife is? Han Yu was more interested in the last question. Why? Yuja Kong, on the other hand, was uninterested. At the same time, he walked out of the courtyard as if he was walking around his own house, and headed towards the guest hall of the Han residence. Han Yu followed closely behind and said in a speechless manner, "You're still asking why? Don't tell me you're not interested in the beauty you're about to embrace? If your imperial father betrothed you, it will definitely be a girl with the best looks, talent, intelligence, etc. in the imperial city. It might even be the 5th family's little Qing Ji. That would be excellent." This was because to the men of status and ability in Tianqian dynasty, it was very common for them to have a large number of wives. And Han Yu was well aware of Yuja Kong's talent and capabilities, so even though Baiye already had super shocking talent, he didn't think that Yuja Kong couldn't have another woman while marrying Baiye. If you like it, this prince can help you ask for an imperial edict from imperial father, so that you won't be constantly thinking about it. Yuja Kong replied. Don't. Han Yu immediately refused and complained, "I'm not blind. I can't tell that you're the one little Kinga likes. If you still ask to marry her, isn't your IQ as stupid as the crown prince's?" But before Han Yu could finish retorting, he couldn't continue. Because the moment he said the word crown prince, he felt so cold. Especially the half of his body that was close to Yuja Kong, it felt like it had been frozen into ice by the extremely low temperature of a certain king. "Have you delivered the medicine to him?" Yuja Kong asked calmly. Even though Baiye's near-death incident wasn't the work of the crown prince's men, if they didn't make the first move, the people behind them wouldn't have dared to make a move either. All in all, the crown prince and his men were now on Yu Zhekong's list of dead. At first, Yu Zhekong had intended to let Crown Prince Yu Fusu off. After all, this unlucky child had already been tricked by Bai Ye. However, the subsequent developments of this matter were far beyond what Yu Zhekong could tolerate. The moment he thought about how if he hadn't cultivated the Meru God Eye and found Bai Ye so quickly, this little one of his would most likely have been ruined, and even his excellent talent would have been destroyed, Yu Zhekong's eyes darkened even more. However, he was planning to leave the Qingxian Heaven group for Bai Ye, so he could only use Yu Fusu to vent his anger. I did, but... Han Yu had a question to ask, but from the corner of his eye, he saw Yu Qinyi and Jun Wuming walking towards him, so he shut up. Chapter 165, Chapter 165, The Storm of Bestowing Marriage, 3. Chapter 165, The Storm of Bestowing Marriage, 3. After bidding farewell to the Genius Academy, Qing Xiantian had also received the news that Yu Qinyi had brought Jun Wuming to the Han residence. Alright, send a message to the Daiwo family. Tell them that His Majesty intends to betroth Daiwo Kinga to the 9th prince as a secondary consort. As for the main consort, it's said that she's the new number 1 genius, White Knight. Qing Xiantian, who had received the news, immediately ordered his subordinates to spread this false news. Brother, is this news true? Qing Xianying was in disbelief when she heard the news. Did Sister Mingshui not succeed? This little slut isn't crippled, and His Majesty still bestowed her with a marriage. He's definitely crippled. Qing Xiantian said with certainty. But why is there a bestowment marriage? And she's even the main consort. Qing Xianying did not understand. Without this news, if the 9th prince still insists on marrying Bai Ye, then even if she's crippled, this news wouldn't have spread. Qing Xiantian slowly replied. Hearing this, Qing Xianying's eyes suddenly lit up. Brother, you mean that the little B*tch Bai Ye may hide the news of being crippled, but if the 5th family knows about this, they will definitely not be convinced and want to fight for it. If that's the case, it's impossible to hide the news that the little B*tch has become useless. By then, she will never be the 9th princess consort. She might even be punished for lying to the emperor and the engagement will be broken off on the spot. Right? Qing Xianying was so excited that she almost jumped up and screamed. Because the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. If that was the case, Bai Ye would be trampled on in public. He recalled Bai Ye's flirtatious appearance during the talent test that day. Qing Xianying seemed to see the embarrassing look of this little bitch falling from the clouds into the mud pool. This feeling. It simply felt too good. Not bad. Qing Xianying was so happy to hear the positive response from the second Qing Xiantian. That's great. Qing Xianying was extremely excited. She hugged Qing Suanation's arm and said, I knew brother would have the best idea. When that time comes, we'll take in this little slut and see how she can still be so arrogant in front of me. Qing Xiantian nodded his head, but he frowned slightly. Don't keep calling her a little slut. She will be your sister-in-law in the future. Hey, she's just a concubine, how can she be worthy of this young lady calling her sister-in-law? Big brother, you're really too much. Do you still think that I haven't been disgusted enough by this little slut recently? I've never seen such a slut of *tch who can hook up with anyone. If it wasn't for that Mr. Qin, we would have sold her to a brothel and let her be. Let her hook up with a group of men. Qing Xianying scolded without any manners. Upon hearing this, Qing Suanation's gentle eyes suddenly turned ferocious. His expression was so scary that Qing Xianying could not continue. Ge. Qing Xianying called out carefully and subconsciously pulled back her hand that was holding Qing Xiantian. Qing Suanation's face changed, but it quickly returned to normal. It's enough to say these words once. Don't let me hear them again. You should learn the bearing of a lady from a noble family. Don't always use the words of a shrew in the market. Yes, brother. Qing Xianying didn't dare to say anything more. Qing Xiantian then nodded and went back to his room to handle his affairs. Under Qing Suanation's control, the Daiwo clan had already obtained all the information that they should know. Chapter 166, Chapter 166, The Level Less Dark Flame is upgraded. Chapter 166, The Level Less Dark Flame is upgraded. Not only the 5th family, but the Yun family, the Mu family, and the Lian family also received the news. In just half a day, the circle of the royal family in the imperial city was flooded with this news. Anyone with a bit of status was secretly discussing this matter. How could this be? Didn't they say that this girl should be crippled? However, the Yun family's matriarch, Guo Wanhui, was obviously unhappy when she heard the news. Hearing this, Yun Chongming glanced at his wife coldly. I didn't know that my wife's heart was so vicious. Guo Wanhui was stunned. What do you mean, hubby? What do you mean? Yun Chongming laughed disappointedly. Do you think that you can hide what you've been doing in the backyard? Will no one find out? Guo Wanhui's face turned pale. She was a smart person and knew that Yun Chongming was referring to the person she had released the crown prince's men to inform Bai Ye and even hold him hostage. It's you indeed. Although Yun Chongming had found out the truth, he still could not help but say in disappointment when the truth was completely verified, I used to think that you were a smart person, but now it seems that you're just so-so. From now on, don't interfere too much. Just take care of the food and drinks in the residence. With that, Yun Chongming did not want to look at Guo Wanhui again. He got up and left the bedroom. Hubby, Wan. Guo Wanhui still wanted to explain, but she could not. She knew Yun Chongming's character. Since he had said so, she really could forget about interfering in any big matters in the future. In this way, she, the Yun family's matriarch, was equivalent to a good-for-nothing. Bai Ye, who was in the final stages of her treatment, had no idea that her marriage with Yu Zhekong had already caused a huge commotion in the imperial city. She was only surprised to find that the Wuji dark flame seems to have changed. Bai Ye followed her perception and forced a wisp of origin flame out of her body. Immediately after, a cluster of flames that flickered with a lustrous red luster ignited from Bai Ye's palm with a whoosh. Aya! Little Spirit's baby voice also began to sound dazed. Little Spirit, who had disappeared for many days, rubbed its eyes drowsily and appeared on Bai Ye's shoulder. However, when it saw the red flame in Bai Ye's palm, it instantly woke up and jumped up. Not only that, but it also screamed as if it had seen a ghost. This, ow, ow, ow. Xiao Ye, quick, turn off the engine. Ow. Bai Ye was taken aback by Xiao Ling's overreaction. However, it was in this moment of shock that she saw the fur on Xiao Ling's body rapidly smoking and withering at a speed that she could see with her naked eye. In just a short while, Xiao Ling had grown from the size of a palm to the size of a fist. If this continued, she would probably be evaporated. Swish. Bai Ye hurriedly kept the little red flame. Xiao Ling, who had almost evaporated, was already so weak that she could not speak. She could only use her pitiful big blue eyes that were filled with tears to strongly condemn Bai Ye's evil actions. Bai Ye felt a great sense of guilt when he saw this. He quickly sent out his yin spiritual qi to help Xiao Ling recuperate. At the same time, he did not forget to ask, does this fire hurt you? Of course. Little Ling, who had just regained her senses, immediately made threatening gestures and said, this fire has that bad guy's aura, and it's very strong. The most detestable thing is that this scoundrel's 9 yang qi is becoming more and more powerful, while I'm still too weak and am completely suppressed. Part 3 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.